We'll get started in just a moment, everybody. Just gotta finish setting everything up as usual. Welcome, welcome. You've been watching Hakeem Jeffries for hours. I'm sorry to hear that. You didn't have to. You could have just not done that. Volume up. Yes. There we go. Should be better. No, Ask a Physicist is on Wednesdays. There we go. Hope that's okay. Howdy, howdy. Let me check my audio. Audio's at max. Let's see. Much better. Okay, we're good, we're good. And I think we're probably good on TikTok as well. So you guys know what to do. If you're just joining us, make sure to like, share, double click on the live, do all these live things that you're supposed to do to get more people in here so we can have some interesting conversations. Anyway, hopefully everybody muted. No, I think that's just you. Hopefully everybody's having a normal, good week. That would be ideal, right? We like good weeks. So, if you guys are a religious person and you want to talk about why you think your religion is true, or you think that you can convince me that your God is real, that your religion is true, feel free to hop on up. We can have a conversation about it. I promise I won't bite your head off. Yeah, I just learned Q-Top thinks the Earth is flat. Yeah, he does, which is hilarious, by the way. Background? Oh, wrong background. There we go. That background. There we go. Thank you. I was live streaming. It sends the thing to TikTok differently from background. Oops. Oh. Wrong. Oopsie daisy. Bro failed 50 students. I guess he must be confusing me for somebody else because I definitely didn't do that. Now you might have a hard time listening if you watched a video where it says I nearly failed 50 students. Nearly meaning that they didn't actually fail. Less than a dozen failed out of 180, which is a pretty good rate. Why are you telling the world you're an atheist? Who would care? Well, lots of people tell the world that they're Christian. Why can't I tell the world that I'm atheist? What's wrong with that? If you're searching for being convinced, that means you really want God in your life. Well, look, if God is real, I'd love to know. Like, honestly, like, I want to know true things. I'd love to know if this is a true thing. Like, I'm super genuine. If you think that me saying I'm an atheist is rage bait, you're lost in the sauce. Just like being publicly atheist is rage bait? Okay. Couldn't someone still be an atheist even if God were real? Well, yeah, but they would be wrong. Oh, we have some guests. Let's bring up a guest. Howdy, howdy. All right, let's talk to About 15 Rats. About 15 Rats. How's it going?
Oh, nice. Hey, it's going well, sir. How's your live going?
We're doing okay. Just started.
All right, I had a question. What
Yeah,
would you say
sure.
to someone who believes God is acting through the scientific framework? How do you explain mutations in evolution as couldn't that be, the invisible hand of God moving things in the right direction such that complex life could eventually get to the level we are now? Like, why do genes mutate the way they do? They seemingly are potentially products of like quantum level stuff, like little bits of uncertainty happening, but it seems to be pretty successful. But also that could be sample
Most
size. What
most
do you say to
mutations are
someone?
detrimental, right?
Yeah,
Like
probably.
most like there are like humans mutate a lot. Humans have a pretty high mutation rate, not as high as some animals, but humans have a pretty high mutation rate, and that results in like birth defects that ends in like a born child dying like within minutes. Like that, humans have a lot of detrimental mutations. It just happens to be that the good ones are the ones that stick around. The bad ones, they don't stick around.
Gotcha. Yeah, success breeds success on that, I guess, and it is a big sample set. You only you don't see the ones that are harmed out of the evolutionary tree there. So,
Right. Well,
I
yeah,
guess then you
because
would have to reconcile that God is doing both equally.
and it seems like we don't need God to explain that, right? Like we know the mechanisms of mutation. These are things like reduplications. These are things like single nucleotide permutations. We know how these things happen. There's no need for a supernatural cause when we have perfectly natural explanations.
Gotcha. No, I mean that makes sense because that's the thing. It's like, believing in evolution. I'm trying to figure out there's a way to really build both into your working model.
I mean, you
Is
can, but it just seems unnecessary. Like it
yeah,
seems like we
no,
can
right.
explain the life that we see around us without invoking something supernatural. Now you can put God somewhere else, but it doesn't seem like you need God to explain evolution.
Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense to me. I mean, um, I just think there could be invisible acts, truly leaning on the free will of people and what is here to do what it's going to do with certain specific rules and deviations from those rules calculated into it all by God.
I don't know what that means.
Saying saying God created the ability for these mutations to
Yeah, okay, so you could
potentially
have
be
that belief if you
successful.
wanted to. You could have that belief if you wanted to. I just don't know why you would.
Probably because it's more comfortable to
Okay.
believe that there's a nice benevolent watcher and mover looking out for you.
I mean, look, if that's comforting for you, and so you want to believe, that's fine, I guess. I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't believe based off of, what you need in your life. It's just not compelling to me.
That makes sense. No, and I respect that.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go, 15 rats, but thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the good discussion.
I feel like I talked to Artemis Spawn of Zeus last time, didn't I? Yeah, I did. So I'm gonna prioritize other people, okay, Artemis? But if we ever out of guests, I'll bring you up. Um, Quantum Cube. What a name. How's it going?
Hello,
Can you hear me all right, Quantum Cube?
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. What god do you believe in?
So, I am Hindu by
Okay,
religion and by faith.
sure.
Uh, I wanted to ask you, like, first of all, what's your view on the argument that if a God exists, what do you have to lose in believing?
Sorry, you cut out one more time. If a god exists, what?
If a God exists, what do you
Mhm.
have to lose in believing in the God
Well, if a
or
god
multiple
exists, then
gods?
I've everything to gain. The question is whether a god exists.
So, why not believe if we don't have a definitive answer, right?
Well, I think we do have definitive answers, at least for some notions of God. Depends on what notion of God you have, but you know, like if you think that God is a
So,
man sitting on top of a mountain throwing lightning bolts, we know that that God's not real, right?
yeah, but
So like there are some
is
gods
it
that we have
not?
definitive answers for.
Yeah. So as you mentioned before, evolution and stuff, right? It builds up. It just keeps going. There is a limit of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we as humans are not at the level where we understand, let's say, beyond time. We can't grasp four dimensions for that matter
I
in
mean,
the sense of time.
like we can't.
So
What do
how
you
do
mean?
we
Like
know that there isn't?
we do. We can and we do. Like we understand the passage of time. We understand three-dimensional space. Like there's four dimensions.
we we cannot grasp it in the sense we cannot view it in four dimensions.
W
How do we know there's not
okay, I mean that's fine, but that's not the only way to
some living
consider
creature
things.
that how do we know there's not some real conscious being or in that dimension or in that reality that we cannot
We're in the
access?
we exist in four dimensions. We exist in three dimensions of space, one dimension of time.
We do,
So like
but
we are that
how do
being.
we know there's something that does not want us to see it and hence we aren't seeing it but has an effect on us?
I mean, look, so generally speaking, if something has an effect on us, then it's measurable. So if you're saying that
Mm-hmm.
it has an effect on us, then let's go out and measure it.
Well, what if we aren't at the level where we can measure it?
Well, then we're not justified in believing that it exists.
Okay, I see your argument. Okay, that was a good talk. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for being here.
Yep.
That was quick. Don't really know what to make of that. Monty and Montego. How's it going?
Yeah, hello.
How's it going? What God do you believe in?
I'm in Ghana, Africa, West Africa.
I asked what God you believe in.
Oh, okay. I believe in Jesus Christ, the Trinity,
Okay. And what would you say is like the most compelling thing you could tell me that would make me think that's true?
Okay. Can we first of all establish that a creator creates in his image, right? You create what you know or what you want to create.
Generally, creators can only create things that they know about. Yeah.
Okay. Then if we can establish that, then we know that human beings, we as ourselves try to create something like AI or anything in our image, like the way we think and do, right?
Well, not necessarily. Like we can create like, dog robots. It's just we have to know about the thing before we can create the thing.
But still, they mimic nature, right? Like animal, like a fish, like anything, right?
I mean, sometimes, not always.
But yes, still they do anything we have created, they mimic nature, right?
What does a cell phone mimic in nature?
Cell phone, it's just for communication,
Yeah,
right?
so
We
but
know
it's
it's
a
just for
creation. It's a creation. What does it mimic in nature?
okay. Let's say if cell phone does not actually mimic anything, it's just an improvement in communication, as I would say.
Yeah, but it's still a creation, but it doesn't mimic anything is the point.
Okay, then isn't it possible as AI, AI understand that it's made up of zeros and ones, right?
Yep.
Okay, then if as humans we understand that we are made of cells, we are made of atoms, we are made of that, does it necessarily say that there is no being who made that possible for us to be alive? Just like AI, human beings, we made those circuits, we made those computers, we made all these things for it to be able to come to life, right? Because we created them, right? Isn't it
Yep.
possible that there is someone who also made it possible, created all these things so that we also can be alive, just as we also made things to
So
come to life?
look, it's in principle possible. The burden is on you though to show that it's actually true.
Okay, so the fact that you understand that you are made of cells and that does not debunk anything about God, right?
Yeah, it doesn't prove God either. So where are we going with this?
But it does not debunk anything, right?
I never said that us being made of cells debunks anything. I've never made
No,
that claim.
I'm not saying you said, but
So then
I'm
why'd you
just
bring it
asking.
up?
It does not, right?
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah. Does it say that? At that point, it means there's a 50% chance there's God and there's 50% chance there's no God, right?
Whoa, how'd you go there? Look, either you won the lottery or you didn't win the lottery. Does that mean that you have a 50-50 chance of winning the lottery?
No, but this is not a lottery. It's not.
Well, no,
about
I mean, so just
lottery.
because there's two options doesn't mean it's a 50-50 chance.
Then how would you say what chance, what possibility in this scenario, what possibility that there is a God and what possibility that there is no God?
Well, I mean, I think that the possibility of the Christian God being real is 0%.
The Christian God is 0.
Yeah, I don't think the Christian God is a possible God.
Why?
It seems like the description of the Christian God is riddled with contradictions. Things like you have trouble with things that are all-knowing. That like there's an inherent contradiction in something being all-knowing. There's problems with set theory and the set of all true facts. There's also contradictions with the existence of I mean, I'm sure you've heard the problem of evil, so there's issues there. There's also explicit contradictions as described in the Bible. There are like direct, like, did Jesus die in the morning? Was he crucified in the morning, or was he crucified in around noon? There's just it's just riddled with problems.
With the Jesus death, people actually wrote that. That wasn't a revelation from God or anything. That was what the testimony about people, right? What they saw, they wrote it down. So, that contradiction would have been from those who wrote it, right?
So you're fine with contradictions in the Bible then? You don't think that that's a problem?
That contradiction does not debunk that Jesus Christ was the Son of God.
Okay, but how do you know that? How do you know that? Wait. So to be clear, you don't think the Bible was divine revelation then?
It is divine revelation.
Well, if it's divine revelation, how is there a contradiction?
But those parts that talked about the death of Jesus Christ is the gospel, right?
And those are from the Gospels. Are the Gospels not divinely revealed?
It was not revealed. It was written by people who were there, what they saw.
And so that's true about all of the Christian Bible, right?
Yes.
So how do we know that any of the Christian Bible is true?
As I'm saying, right? Those parts that wrote about the life of Jesus Christ was about they were written from people who actually
so how do we know that any of it's true? How do we know that any of it's true if it's all faulty? If it could all be faulty?
Historically, it is true. Historically, it is true because not only the Bible talk about Jesus Christ, but other books talk about Jesus Christ. We all heard about this, right?
Well, no. The claim being made is that Jesus rose from the dead, right? And that's not attested anywhere except in the Christian Bible.
Are you sure about that, though?
I am 100% sure about that, yeah.
Only in the Bible?
Yes, there are no external historical sources from around the same time period that make that attestation.
Okay. And to this date, right? Let's say during those times, about 2,000 years ago, was there any other book which said that no, Jesus Christ did not die, the Christians are lying, anything like that?
That's not. Of course there isn't, but that's not the kind of disqualifying evidence. It's not like if there's no book that says otherwise, that means that the thing is true. Like, do you have any books that says that that Shimon Bar Kokhba was not the Messiah?
We don't.
Okay, so does that mean that Shimon Bar Kokhba is the Messiah?
That's not my belief, and I'm not saying that he's not the Messiah, right? But you said
he was. That would mean that Jesus wasn't. So
But you said that there's a 0% chance that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. You don't believe in a Christian, right? That's what you said.
Yeah, and that's because of the notion of a Christian
And
God, a God that is able to take actions outside of time, a God that is able to commit evil despite being all good, a God that is able to know everything despite omni-knowledge being impossible. That God is
so
impossible.
you don't think that God can do anything? The first statement, what did you say? We said first before you said the evil thing. What did you say?
Are you familiar with the problem of evil?
Yes.
Okay, so what do you make of the fact that there exists, at least, reasonable people agree that there exists,
Okay.
what's it called?
Okay.
Sorry, please don't cut me off. There's a word I'm looking for. There exists a type of evil that is unnecessary.
Okay. Let me make this. Heat, right? The absence of heat. We all know when there is no heat, then there is cold. Cold does not actually exist, right?
What?
The absence of heat is cold, right? When there is no heat,
Sure. Gratuitous evils. That's what they're called. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, but coldness does not really exist, right?
Sure.
You know this. Okay. When there is a certain rule that states this, and you disobey that rule, we all state that that is a crime or like some sort of crime, right?
Sure.
Okay. Now, to us Christians, our God says we do this, we do that, we do this, we do that. Anything outside that context is bad or is a crime to our God, right? That's what our books are saying. Just like you can have an AI, you can set rules for it that if the
Look,
AI
is this supposed to address the problem of evil?
This is actually what evil and good is about. Like it's just like hot and coldness,
Look,
just like that.
Monty, when an earthquake happens and a 4-year-old is crushed to death underneath, is that a good thing?
To us, it's not a good thing.
Is it a good
right?
thing to God?
But as I'm saying, the goodness of God never said that He won't let any disasters be.
To be clear,
He never said that.
Is that good to God?
For God to do that.
Yeah, is it good when God crushes a 4-year-old?
No one. God did not do that. You don't have any proof that God actually did that.
Is God the source of all things?
He created all things. Yeah. Then you can say that He made the earthquake happen. That's why you're going
to. So is he a sufficient cause for the earthquake to happen?
Would I say he's a sufficient cause? I won't say. No, I would not.
Okay, so that means that God is not the cause of all things.
He made all things possible to exist. You know, that's what.
So to be clear, you agree God is not the cause of all things?
He made everything possible to happen.
Can you answer my question?
Anything.
Is God the cause of all things?
Yeah, he's the source of all things.
Okay, and including earthquakes?
Yes, including earthquakes.
So he is the source of the earthquake that crushed the 4-year-old?
No, you are trying to justify this in a human form that is bad.
I'm not. There's no human form here. This has nothing to do with human form. Is God the source of the earthquake that crushed a 4-year-old?
Yes, he's the source.
And right? so if God were not there, if God's will were different, would that earthquake have happened?
What will? Do you know God's will? Do you understand God's will?
Please answer the question.
And also, I'm asking, what do you think God's will is? Just to kill people?
I'm asking if it whatever it is. I'm asking if it were different, would the earthquake still have happened?
Yes, it would have happened.
So something would have happened that was not God's will?
As I'm saying, it would have happened if earthquake existed, even if there is no God, and earthquake still existed as a natural disaster, it would have happened and would have killed a child. Yeah,
Wait, so
it
to be
would
clear, you think that there are things that happen that are not God's will?
that God made it happen. He allowed it.
That wasn't my question.
That's why. What was your question?
Are there things that happen that are not God's will? Natural events, earthquakes.
Everything that happened in this world is of His will, right?
Right, so that means that God willed the earthquake to happen.
Of course, He
Okay, so
allowed
God is the cause. God is the cause of the child being crushed to death.
Yes.
Seems pretty straightforward to me. And is that good? Is it good to cause children to be crushed to death?
That is what I'm saying. As humans, we are saying that
This
is
has nothing to
evil
do with humans.
in
I'm asking you. Is it God's? Is it good from God's perspective? Please avoid. Please stop avoiding the question. Is it good from God's perspective?
Can you let me answer the
4-year-old child to death?
I can. Can you let me answer this question, please?
Well, yes, but please make sure that you answer the question.
In a way that I can answer the question, right?
Well, it is a yes or no question. So you can answer with yes, no, or sometimes, and then you can explain.
God is the cause of the earthquake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to us humans, no, that is evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm saying, the will of God is not the will of man. We can't justify what He is or what He sees, right?
So that's great, but do you think that answered my question?
Oh, can I explain further? I can't just say,
because my question wasn't at all about what humans think is evil. That wasn't what my question was about.
Oh, but if you ask me what if in the eyes of God that is evil or not, I can't tell you. I'm not God, right?
Well,
but
I mean,
as a human,
look, you can think about it though, because you can. Right, but you can think about it, right? So there's two options. In the eyes of God, it's either good or it's not good, right? So if it's not good, that means that God did something that's not good. That's a problem, right? On the other hand, if in the eyes of God it is good, well then it seems like under your view, where you get your morality from God, it seems like you should also think that it's good.
That is what I'm saying, that the term evil and the term good, right, in the eyes of God wouldn't be the same as humans, right? As the way that a computer or a robot.
Do we agree that God thinks it's good?
What?
Does God think it's good?
I don't know. I can't actually tell. That's what I'm saying.
Well, God can't think it's bad, because then God would have done something that's bad, right?
But God knows what is evil and what is good.
Yeah, can God do evil things?
God, can He do evil things?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you are asking.
Yes, can God do evil things?
He does no evil.
So that means that if God is the cause of the earthquake, then the earthquake must be good.
In human eyes,
no, this is not in human eyes. This is in God's eyes.
I can't tell you what God thinks.
Yes, you can.
Tell you what.
Yes, you look, Monty. Use your brain. You just said that God can't do bad things, and we also know that God did the earthquake, which means the earthquake must be a good thing. Thank you for the galaxy, BQ.
In the Bible, God actually made the earth crack for people to fall in, and He crushed them, right?
Yeah, and in His view, that's a good thing, right?
Moses, at that time, He punished them. It was a form of punishment, right? And I'm not saying that for the question punish the child, but I'm trying to tell you that in the view, as a human, I can't tell you what God thinks, but what I can tell you is, as a human, I can say that is bad, that is evil.
I don't care about your human perspective. I care about what God thinks about this. And yes, you can know what God thinks about. You absolutely can, by using deductive reasoning.
Do you know what I'm thinking right now?
No, I don't know what you're thinking. I don't need to in order to establish that an all-good God can only do good things.
What do you term as good, right?
Whatever God deems as good, that's what I'm using to refer to God, or to refer to good.
What do you term as good, right? What do you see
it's
that
it's not my definition that's relevant.
But do you know the Christian God, right? As we say, the Christian God. What do you think He terms as good? And what do you think he
It's
terms as?
irrelevant. The point is that he
Why?
is whatever
Because you're
he
trying to justify that just like the
look
earthquake happened is
if
bad.
you believe that God is all good, that can't be referring to your definition of good, because God causes things that you think are evil. So it can only be referring to God's definition of good. And so what I'm saying is that the earthquake, under God's definition of good, is good.
The thing is, as you are saying, there is a time, as I said in the Bible, he himself, right, cracked the earth open.
Yes, and he thought it was good.
And yes, he punished them. Yeah.
So I'm asking, does he think it's good this time when an earthquake happens and a 4-year-old gets crushed to death?
That's what I'm trying to say. That
the answer is obviously yes. By the way, he can't do bad things. So
he can't allow it to happen. It doesn't mean that he caused it. You understand, right?
Can things happen? Can things happen against God's will?
He can allow things to happen.
So
according to
billions of years ago, when God was setting up the universe, he had choices on how to make the world, right?
Yeah.
One of those choices included putting arranging the earth in such a way that an earthquake would happen at a specific time where a specific 4-year-old was. He could have chosen a world where that earthquake didn't happen at that time, or that 4-year-old wasn't there at that time, right? But the world he chose to make is the world where the 4-year-old gets crushed to death, and that's like a tragic thing.
Okay. At the beginning of our conversation, I made mention of AIs, right? AI is supposed to be intelligent. Right?
This is a pivot, by the way.
I'll come back. I'll come back to this.
Promise?
I'll come back to this.
Otherwise, I'm going to make fun of you. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'll come back. Yeah, I'll come back to this. AI is supposed to be intelligent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to have a little bit of free thinking, right? Able to make it searches and give you answers.
That's the goal, but it's not there yet. Sure.
It's not there yet, but that's the goal. We all know that's the goal, right?
Sure.
Okay. Now, in our Bible, right? As I'm saying in our Bible, I'm a Christian. So in our Bible, God made us in a way that we, as ourselves, will have that kind of intelligence, right? But we are not artificial, we are natural. That kind of intelligence that we have our own free will to do things that we want, right?
Yeah, we have freedom to do stuff, sure.
Yeah. And in the beginning, God, as the Christians will say, Adam and Eve, right, was in the Garden of Eden. They were there. God gave them some instructions, just like an AI.
Are you about to make a free will defense? Is that what we're doing?
If you let me land, then you know what I'm talking about, right?
Okay, well, land the plane, please.
Okay. So, in the Garden of, just like we have given AI some free will, but not absolutely any will that it won't, right? It have some limits, right? It have some limits.
Sure.
We have, so God limited us at that point to some point, but we still had that free will, right? So we as humans went on our way, broke our code, ate the fruit of evil and good. We knew about all these things. God cast us out into the world where we are living right now, right? Where disasters, where evil happened, where good happened, and that God sees them. I'm not saying God does not see all the evil. He does. And he knows that this will happen, but he allows them to happen. He does not cause it. He knows it's coming and he allowed them to happen.
Monty.
Right?
Monty.
Yeah.
If you're walking down the street next to the ocean, or if you're walking on the beach next to the ocean, and you see a kid drowning,
okay,
and you know how to swim, you're a great swimmer, and you just do nothing, you just keep walking.
Okay.
Did you do a bad thing?
Yeah, as a human, I did a bad thing, of course.
Okay. Now, if God was walking down the beach and saw a kid drowning and did nothing, is he a bad thing? Did he do a bad thing?
No, he did not.
Seems like you have a higher moral standard for yourself than you do for God.
No, but yeah, but what I'm saying right now is he did not, because one of God goodness, right? One of his rules is that he does not go back and he does not go against his own rules. One of his rules was, I'm
He
giving
did-
these people free will.
Monty,
He
Monty,
gave us free will to do
Monty,
what we want.
this is a terrible argument. God does miracles all the time, at least in your
He
view.
does miracles. Yeah,
So he could just miracle the kid out of the water.
but such things have happened before. That people miraculously were drowning.
Right.
And
So now you're contradicting yourself.
no, I'm just saying, if you are talking about miracles, then I'm saying such things have also happened before. But what I'm saying right now is, God is a God who follows rules.
So God is watching a 4-year-old be crushed to death by an earthquake, and chooses to do nothing about it.
Yes, he does not go against his rules.
Yeah,
He
and
have
in
lost
any
some
set of morality, that system,
Yeah.
like that action, having the power to stop something horrible, something tragic from happening, seeing it happen, and then doing nothing about it, that's bad. That's evil. Like it's cruel.
Okay.
The only
So
reason you would let that happen is if you knew something good would come of it. But then you have to justify, well, what's the good that comes of a 4-year-old getting crushed to death?
Okay, so you are from America, right?
Yes.
Okay. You have certain, every country have its constitution, every rule like that they follow, right?
Okay. So are you going to just say, well, God has to follow his own rules again? Because you've said that now twice.
That is what I'm saying.
Look, God does miracles all the
if
time. God could have set up the universe in a way so that there is no, so that there are no earthquakes that crush 4-year-olds, right? He could have set up the universe that way, but he chose not to.
At first, that did not happen. That wasn't what happened. The Bible.
Well, I mean that to be clear, that's like factually untrue. Like there were earthquakes prior to the garden, prior to like humans existing. So
it's like we opened up the Pandora's box. We did open up the fruits of.
So to be clear, are you saying that it's Eve's fault that the 4-year-old got crushed to death?
Yes. You
Okay.
know causality. Right? You believe in physics. You know that. You believe in chaos, right? You believe that.
You don't want to go there. So just to be clear, you're saying that God is punishing the descendants of Eve for Eve's crime? Is that the claim?
God is not punishing the descendant of Eve right now.
Oh, okay, so then why is God letting these egregious evils happen?
That's what I'm saying. What caused it was what happened in the Garden of Eden, right? What happened in the Garden of Eden caused evil.
To be clear, that was a punishment, right? That was a punishment. God explicitly lays out a punishment.
Yeah, he gave us a punishment, right? He said we would die, we will grow old, we have
God didn't have to make that be the punishment, right? He didn't have to. When look, if you're a parent, Monty, Monty, if you're a parent and your kid, I don't know, maybe he's really angry and he breaks a window, right?
Yeah.
That kid probably deserves some consequences, right? Maybe he was just like an 8-year-old or something like that. And so maybe you send him to his room and then, he has to skip dessert. I don't know. That would be like a reasonable punishment, reasonable consequence for his actions, for like him, throwing I don't know. I'm not a parent, but like that doesn't seem so far-fetched. On the other hand, what if you instead sent him to like burn in hellfire for eternity? That would be less punishment. That would be less justified. And it would be even less justified than that? Punishing his future children. That wouldn't make any sense.
That's what I'm saying. It's causality, right? What we did.
Look, God makes the rules. God makes the rules for causality. He could have made it differently, so he didn't have to punish the children of Eve.
No. He made the rules, and he does not go against those.
Yes,
rules.
he could have made different rules. He could have made different rules so that there's not as much evil in the world.
Why would he? Why don't the government make rules that oh, I'll be giving everyone cars, I'll be giving
The
everyone
government's
houses.
not.
Why don't they,
Look, Monty, the government's not
why
perfect.
don't
The
they?
government doesn't have every power. The government doesn't know everything. The government isn't perfectly good. Under your view, under the Christian view, God is a perfect being that has the power to do anything and loves everybody in the maximal possible way. So why didn't God set up the rules in such a way that there aren't horrible things that happen to people?
Okay. If a person kills, like, let's say 5 people, right, for no reason, right, and he also is being killed, is that good or bad?
I think that the death penalty is not just. No.
It's not just, so the person just killed 5 people and he also being punished, right? And
Yeah, I think
the
that life imprisonment is probably acceptable. I don't think that the death
life
penalty is justified.
but the death penalty is bad. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, I think the death penalty is
But
bad.
okay. But you know, those people who made that law, who made that rule possible, thought that was bad. You know, thought that
Yeah,
that was
well,
good. You know,
look,
they think
look.
that.
So you've just made my point for me. The point is the people who make the rules, they think that the rules are good, and so the fact that your God made the rules such that the outcome is that 4-year-olds get crushed to death by earthquakes means that your God thinks that those outcomes are good.
That's what I'm saying. That God, what we think
grant
is
that.
good and what we think is bad, that is not what God thinks, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
That's fine.
Right? That's
Wait,
not
hold
what
on.
God...
Actually, Monty, where do you get your morals from?
What do you mean?
Where do you get your morals from?
My morals?
Yeah, what you think
about
is good and
religion.
bad. Not about religion.
What do I think?
Where do you get what you think is good and bad from?
Oh, from what I was being taught. That's where I get them from.
Oh, okay. Now, do you think that your morals are 100% correct? Do you think that they're like definitely like if you think it's bad, then it's actually bad?
I wouldn't say all of it are correct, right?
Okay,
But
so
because
because your morals disagree with God's morals on some things, right?
Yes, my morals disagree with God's things. Yes.
And who's right?
Yes.
Who's correct?
God.
Okay, so
God
why don't you
is
change
right.
your morals? Why don't you change your morals to agree with God's?
But I'm not all that powerful. If I was powerful like God, I would have.
This isn't a power issue. This is just a belief issue. Look, if you believe that you're wrong about... No, Monty, please. Monty, please, let me finish this. Let me finish the sentence. Look, if you believe that God is correct about the morals that God holds, about God's view on what's good and evil, and you think that your views don't align with those views, why would you believe that something is good if you think that God knows that it's bad? Or vice versa?
No, we think that is bad, right?
That's why I said vice versa. So why would you think that something is bad if God thinks it's good? Wouldn't you want to fix your morals?
My morals, what God taught me, right? What I've learned from the Bible, right? There are some certain rules. There are some certain line that I can cross. I'm not. It's like a soldier have, he can be given the mandate to kill, right? Like in a firing squad or a war or something. But
are there things
but
that we can do that are good that God could not do that is good, or vice versa? Are there things that we could do that's evil that if God did it, it would be good?
No, I'm saying that God, He's more powerful than us. That
that's
He
irrelevant
can
to
do
the
certain
question.
things. What?
It's irrelevant. It's relevant to the question. Are there things that we can do that are bad that if God does them, it's good?
Yes.
Okay.
Like
so then why is it bad when we do it?
Because we are not all that powerful. You think
it doesn't have to do with power. This is a moral argument. It has nothing to do with power.
It have everything to do with power. If we were like God,
morals have nothing to do with. Wait. Do you think that?
Morals, right?
Hold on. Did you just admit that your morals are might makes right?
What?
Did you just admit that your morals are just might makes right?
I didn't quite get that. What?
Do you believe that things are moral if you have the power to do them?
Yes.
Oh, so if I have the power to topple a government and become a dictator, does that make that moral?
That will be your morals that you will impose on us.
That wasn't my
as
question.
humans,
That
right?
wasn't my question. I'm
Yes.
not making it. I'm
Yes,
not
that
making
will
a
be-
subjective
yes.
moral argument here. That wasn't my question. I'm asking,
That-
does it make
I'm
it?
saying-
Does it make
that's
it?
what I'm saying.
Does it make it right?
Yes, it would make it right. In your
Okay.
eyes, it will make it right.
That's
Then you
that's
will
not what I
have to
asked. I didn't say
impose
in
it.
my eyes. I'm asking, does it make it right?
It will make it right, yeah. But
Okay.
you know,
So
I
so
will-
to be clear, if I have the so you're telling me that if I have the power to unalive somebody, then it's fine.
yeah,
It's just fine for me to do that.
you have the power to do that. That would be fine. Why wouldn't you be fine? People do that all the time in wars. People do
All
it
right.
all the time.
All right.
Government have been
No, we're
killing
good. We're good. We're good.
people.
I'm not going to talk to a guy who said that it's fine if you unalive somebody. We're good. We're good. What are you doing? What are you doing, my guy? All right, let's talk to a disciple of Christ. A disciple of Christ, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing all right. What God do you believe in? Well, that's a stupid question.
So, I believe in Jesus. He's
I
my
would have never
Lord and he's
expected.
my savior.
It's totally unexpected. Right, so what's like the most compelling thing that you could tell me that would convince me that that's the case?
So, just before we start, I want to make a disclaimer.
Mhm.
So, I'm not perfect in my understanding of Jesus, as I just
Okay.
became a believer a year ago,
Okay.
and my English language is not perfect. As
Your
well.
English is almost perfect. I would have never guessed that it's not,
No.
that you didn't learn it when you were 2.
Yes. So,
right.
what was your
Go
question?
ahead. Well, my question is, what's
You
the most...
said- I want to answer one of your questions for the previous person. You asked him why God causes earthquakes.
Sure,
So,
yeah?
from my point of view, from my understanding of Jesus, Jesus doesn't actually cause earthquakes. It is
Well,
caused
in your
by-
view, it would be the Father, right?
So I believe Jesus, the Father, the Holy Spirit are one.
Well, that's a problem, but we can talk about that too if you want.
Yes. So Jesus, God, is not the one who is causing earthquakes. It is
Okay,
caused
why do they
by
happen?
fallen angels. So fallen angels, they control us. They make us sin. They control the world. They control presidents, kings, and all of these nations. They control them. They control the wars, the destruction. All of this is from falling angels.
I'm a little
So,
confused because
Yeah.
who created the fallen angels?
So God didn't create sin.
Sorry, who created
didn't
the fallen
create-
angels?
So you can't blame it on God
Well,
because
but
they
that's
didn't
why are
follow
you avoiding
him,
the question?
because they
Who
followed
created the fallen?
themselves.
Who created the fallen angels?
God created everything.
Okay, so he created the fallen angels, right?
He didn't create the fallen angels. They created
Wait,
themselves.
I thought he created everything.
They created themselves because they made the sin which separated them from God.
Wait, so hold on. So they created the sin.
Yes.
I thought God
There
created
were
everything.
no sin.
Wait,
No,
so
no,
did
no, no.
so
There
God
were
didn't
no
create
sin.
everything?
So God created everything good.
Okay, but there are
That
things
is-
that God didn't create that exist in the world.
Yeah, there are things that the devil can mimic, and he can create
So
things like
so
evil,
okay,
like
so
hatred, like
so you don't believe that God created
all of
everything
these
then?
things. I believe God created everything good.
Okay. And so when God created the devil, was that good?
The devil created himself. God didn't
Oh.
create him. So he created himself.
Wait,
he
wait.
makes himself a devil
Wait,
because
so hold on.
God created everyone.
Sorry, so
Angels,
God
humans,
didn't
and
create the
all of
devil.
that. No,
I'm talking
physically,
about
he
the
created
being.
him.
Okay, so God
Physically,
did create
he
the devil.
created him. But
Could God have created the devil in a way that the devil wouldn't have fallen?
yeah, then he will be intervening in their freedom. So they will be
Wait,
like robots.
wait,
If
do
he
angels
controls
wait,
their
so do
way-
angels have free will?
Everyone has free will.
Can angels do sin?
Yes, the devil
Okay.
made the sin when he
Even
wanted
even in
everyone to
heaven.
follow him.
Even in heaven,
When
the angels can
when
do
he
sin.
created evil. What?
So the angels, they're in heaven, right?
Not all of them.
Okay, well, the angels there are angels in heaven, right?
Yes, they are
Okay.
angels. Two
Can
fifths
those
of angels are
angels,
in heaven.
can those angels in heaven, can they do sin?
No, because they are
I thought
sanctified
that
with
I thought
Jesus.
that I thought that God can't
When we are
intervene. I thought that they had
sanctified
free
with
will.
Jesus, when we are sanctified with Jesus, we don't sin because he
I'm not
purifies
asking
us
whether they
from
do. I'm
all
asking whether
evil.
they can.
No, they can't because they are with God. If you are separated from God, you sin.
So
That's what
wait
the
a minute.
devil did.
Was
He
the
separated
devil's
himself from
hold
God,
on,
and
hold
he
on. To be
wanted
clear,
people to follow him. Yeah.
so disciple, was separating
Yes.
himself from God a sin?
Yes.
Okay,
If you
when he
separate yourself,
at
that's what
first,
Adam did. He
disciple,
separated himself from God. He wanted to know what's good and what's evil. And when he separated
well,
himself from
that was
God,
even out
he
Adam,
made a
but
sin.
disciple, it's
Yeah.
not related to the question I'm asking. So so walk me through this. God creates heaven. He creates the angels. One of those angels is known as Lucifer, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
now that angel is currently with God because God created the angels
No.
with him, right? No,
Currently, in the meantime,
no.
no, he's not
Like
with God.
when God created Lucifer, was Lucifer with God?
He was with the angels. He was the like the president of angels.
Okay, great. Was he with God
Not all time.
at the beginning when Lucifer was created? Did God
Hmm.
or was Lucifer with God?
So, do you mean all angels were they all with God?
Yeah. Where were they? Were they with God? Were they
Yeah, they
somewhere
were with
else?
God.
Okay.
So were as Adam. He
Right,
was
right.
with
So,
God.
right, I agree. Okay, great. So they were with God, but
Hmm.
you had just 5 minutes ago said that
Mm.
if you're with God, you can't commit sin.
Yeah, but the devil separated himself when he created himself.
Right, but hold on. But you said
Yeah,
that separating yourself from God is a sin.
yeah. That's
So,
creating yourself.
how could he
When
have
you
separated
create
himself
yourself,
from,
when you
please?
believe in yourself, you're separating from God.
How could he
You're
have
following
separated
yourself. You're not
himself?
following
How
me
could he have separated himself from God if doing so is
because
a
he
sin?
made
And in
himself.
order to separate
He
himself
wanted to
from
be
God,
God. He
please,
wanted to be
in
the
order to
God.
separate himself from God, he would have to be
Yeah.
in the presence of God.
What? Come
In
again, please.
order to separate himself from God, he would have to be in the presence of God.
In order to separate himself from God, he has to be. I'm not understanding your question.
Look,
Please
okay,
ask me in another
no,
way.
this is fine. So let's say you and I are hanging out, right? We're
Yes.
hanging out, and then I decide to separate myself from you. I decide to leave.
You don't want to hang out with me anymore.
Yeah. So that means that
Okay.
in order to take that action, in order to separate myself from you, I must have been with
Yeah.
you at first.
Uh-huh.
So that means that Lucifer was with God when he
Yes.
decided to sin
But he
and
created
separate
himself
himself.
from the inside. He wanted
No,
to rule
but that's a
everyone.
sin.
He wanted to be God.
But that's a
So
sin.
this time
How did he do this if
he wasn't physically separated from God. He was in
So
heaven.
I'm not asking about that.
But
I'm asking
yeah.
when he separated himself from God. That was the sin,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Okay, but how can he commit a sin if he's in the presence of God?
His from the inside out. So from your inside, you can have a self, a being. This self grows as more
Okay,
as you
so
put
angels
into it.
could do
So
that in
if
heaven.
you want angels, humans, Adam did it.
Even
From
in
what I
heaven, angels can
understand.
do that,
Angels, they can grow from within. They can grow a
right?
self, a being, and they want to be like God.
Right,
It's
right. So
possible.
angels could sin while in heaven.
So at the beginning of the life, I don't know where angels were. Were they in heaven with God or were they on the his skies? I'm not sure. I came a believer a year ago. But I know this. If you create a self, a being, you're separated from God at this moment, not physically, but you're separated like spiritually from him.
Okay, so the angels in heaven that
So
are not
so
separated
Lucifer
spiritually,
created
the
himself
angels in
from the
heaven,
inside.
the
Yeah.
angels in heaven who are not separated from God spiritually, they could
Yes.
just grow something inside of them and become separated from God spiritually, right?
Yeah, but they didn't when
No,
Lucifer
that wasn't my question. I asked,
mhm.
could they?
Could they
Yeah,
from
like
the
now.
inside?
There are angels in heaven now, right?
Yes.
Could they just start growing some whatever
I don't
inside of
know.
themselves?
I don't know the future. I don't know everything.
I'm
What
not
you think
asking
of
I'm not
that?
asking if it will happen. I'm not asking if it will
Yeah.
happen. I'm asking if it's possible for it to happen.
So there, after the devil took some angels with him and they fell, he took
It's not.
all the bad
It's not.
angels.
Oh, wait a minute. So is it
Mm,
possible for the angels that are still in heaven
yeah.
to grow something within themselves and separate themselves from God? Is that
I don't know.
possible?
It's possible. Yes, it's
Okay,
possible.
it's possible. That means that it's possible
Because
to do. That means that it's
I don't know. I don't know.
possible.
I'm not sure. I don't
Look,
know.
so
You're asking me a question like
yeah,
only
no,
God
that's
knows.
fine. So look, we can examine both answers. Suppose for a moment
Yeah.
that it is possible. Well, that means that it's possible to do sin while in heaven, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And you probably don't want to believe that. So
Uh,
maybe
so
it's not
if you
possible.
create yourself and you're separating yourself from God spiritual, yeah, you make a sin.
Yeah, okay. So you're saying that you can do sin while in heaven?
Uh, that's what the devil did, obviously.
Okay. So there's
Made a
sin in
sin.
heaven. So like if somebody dies and goes to heaven, they could just sin.
Okay, so after Jesus died, he gave us the eternal life. After we die from the world, that's what he says. He says you need to deny yourself. Yourself has to die from the world. So you can't be saved. You can't go to heaven before yourself dies. You need to die. Yourself need to die from the world so you can go to heaven. So in heaven, you're not going to have a self with you. So this thing is not going
Why
to
couldn't
happen. Don't worry.
wait, so to be clear, is there no free will in heaven?
There is, but you don't have a self. We gained the self after Adam ate from the tree. The
Wait,
tree
hold
of
on.
knowledge was the
What does
was
it
the
mean what does it mean to not have a self?
so there is we as humans we are made of flesh and spirit and
Mm-hmm.
a self. We
I don't
didn't
know
have a
what you
self
mean by a
before.
self. I don't know
That's
what that
why
means. Do you
humans
mean a
only
soul?
knew good. So a self is like a being. It's like what tells you. You know, in your social media, you see people they say love yourself, and you feel something good when they say that. They
Is
say
this,
trust
by the
in
way,
yourself. You
is this
feel
like
something
founded
good.
in is this notion of, because like as far as I'm concerned, the only,
Yeah.
identities that are found in the Christian Bible are the body and the soul. There's not like a third
And
thing,
also, why Jesus tells us deny yourself.
because that's just a word to mean deny the being that you are, which is like your body and soul.
Yes, the being. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
The
so you
being
don't have a
is the
body
one
or a soul? You don't have a body or
you
soul
have
in
a
heaven?
body and you have a spirit and you have a being, a self.
No, no,
That's three
no, no,
things.
so at least in Christian,
We didn't have
disciple,
the being before.
disciple,
So when Jesus
disciple,
said,
disciple.
yeah,
In Christian theology, the being is the soul.
no, it is not. It's the self.
Wait,
So
so
the being
can you
is
find a biblical
yourself.
reference for this? For like some for
No, I
distinguishing
just
between the
became a
being or the
believer a
self and the
year ago.
soul?
I didn't read the whole Bible.
So it sounds like you're just making this up.
No, I understand what Jesus tells me. He tells me deny yourself. And I know we are humans made of flesh and spirit.
Yeah, and those are the two things in the Christian theology. There's not
Yes.
like some additional third thing.
So the third thing we gained from the tree.
No, that's not a
This
thing.
is
There isn't a
ourself.
third
So
thing.
what Jesus
That's not a,
told
there isn't a
what
third
did
thing.
Jesus tell Adam? What did he tell him?
Disciple.
To
There
tell him,
isn't a third in Christian
you're not
theology. There
allowing me
isn't a
to
third
speak.
thing. You're not listening. There isn't a third thing in Christian theology. It's not a thing.
There is, but you're maybe following a religion or something. I'm following Jesus by faith, and he teaches me a
That's
new thing every
Christianity.
day. So
Okay.
I don't look.
Okay, I
I'm
mean
not
that's cool. Look,
following.
if you
I don't
want to be a
believe.
heretic, that's cool.
Look.
It's fine with me.
I don't believe that God set a book and said that's the book that has everything. No.
So then
God
why are you
teaches
relying on the
everything
book for your
every
theology?
day. Yeah, the book recorded Jesus and his teachings and his commandments. So we
To be clear,
live the book.
you're relying on like Genesis,
I
right?
rely on Jesus spiritually. He can teach me everything every day, new things. So I don't rely on a book. No, Jesus said, "I'm the truth. I'm the way.
How are
I'm
you
the
getting
life."
the
So I
information? How are
follow
you
him
getting
because he's the way.
disciple, you're preaching? How are you getting
Yeah,
information about what Jesus says if not from a book?
spiritually, he can teach me.
Does Jesus talk to you?
No, but through experience. You meet people, you meet you everything happens every day is a new day. Every day is a new
How is
experience. Every day
what does that have to
is
do
a
with
new
Jesus?
lesson.
What does that have to do with
So
Jesus?
Jesus teaches. It's not life happens like randomly. I don't believe in the law of randomness. Everything
I don't know what
happens.
law you're referring to. Look,
Yeah.
in what
So
way is Jesus teaching you?
so today he taught me that we need to seek him constantly and not
Wait, how did he teach
rely
you
on our
this?
own understanding.
How did he
I
teach you
didn't know
this?
this. Okay.
How did he
I
teach you
didn't know
this?
this.
How
I
did he
was
teach you
talking with
this?
my mom
Uh-huh.
and she told me I didn't know this was a verse on the Bible in the Bible. And I told her that we need to constantly seek Jesus. I just thought about this for no reason.
Okay, so she told
And
you
I
something.
went downstairs
So your mom
and I
told you
told her
something.
that we need no, I told her, you're not letting me speak. I told her, I told my mom that we need to constantly seek Jesus and not rely on our own understanding. Until she told me that there is a verse on Proverbs. Let me find it. And this
I don't
verse
really
says
care.
the same thing. So what I want to say to you,
So
I'm
are you
not here
saying
to
that
convince
Jesus
you.
put the thought in your
I'm
mind?
not here to convince you or anyone.
Oh. Oh,
It's your
okay.
choice. It's your life.
Thank you then. The live says, "Can you convince me to believe in your God?" So if you're not here to convince me, okay. We do have some super chats to go over. And thank you guys for the donations. I appreciate you as always. From Nectu, we have $5 with the calm and linear. I'm doing my best. From Stinky Ethian with the $5. Thanks for the video. It was like when your dad agrees to play catch with you. From Colin Stalker with the 5 British pounds. Most of the time, the religious just make it up as they go along, trying to fit God into what science has discovered. That does happen quite frequently. Look, there is a way to be religious and also, trust the scientific principles. But you're going to have a hard time convincing other people that your religion is true if that's the position you take. Like, if you have some sort of personal experience that encourages faith or that, convinces you to believe, I think that that's actually quite justified because personal experiences are really like the root way that we can come to conclusions about the world around us. But then you have to recognize that that will be compelling to nobody else but yourself. All right, so David Hurty is spamming, so let's let the spammer up. So then they quit spamming. David, how's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. Chill for a minute. George Kiratane, I shouldn't have said his full name. George sent me $780 just now for the Maple Fund.
Oh my.
I guess I'm buying
Oh
Maple
my.
today. Thank you guys. Thank you so much, George. Let's hear a huge W for George. That if you guys don't know, Maple was a piece of software that I used in my research, and up until I moved, I had access to it because I had institutional access. However, I moved and I didn't have access to the software anymore, and the software is really, really expensive. It's about $1,400. I mentioned this the other day, so just because it's annoying. So I currently have a free trial, and George just sent me $780 for that purpose. So thank you, George, so much. That makes my life significantly easier. I appreciate you. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to explain what was happening there, but again,
Yeah.
thanks. Right, David, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah. Okay, so I just figured something out recently that I thought was super interesting. I was studying like Greek gods, Mesopotamian gods, Roman gods, all the above. And recently I found out that each of their names, especially the king of these gods, like Zeus, what was his name? Jupiter, right? All of these gods translate down to Baal, which is one of the Satans, no?
Jupiter doesn't translate to Baal.
That's what I saw.
So Jupiter is a Proto-Indo-European word, and it comes from Deo or Jeo. I don't know how to pronounce it. But we can look it up if you want. It has nothing to do with Baal. It comes from Proto-Indo-European root dew, meaning to shine, and by extension, sky, heaven, or God. It has nothing to do with Baal.
From what I saw, from what I read, Zeus equals out to Baal. Thor would translate down to Baal. All these gods translate down to
But we
these
just
fallen
fact-checked it.
angels.
It's not true.
I don't know if that's true or not true. I don't know if you're correct in this sense.
Okay, why don't we pull it up? Let me show you.
Yeah, pull it up.
Jupiter, etymology. Can you see it?
Okay. Yeah.
Jupiter, also Jupiter, supreme deity of the ancient Romans, from Latin Iupater, Jove, god of the sky and chief of the gods, from Proto-Indo-European, that's what PIE stands for, Dieu Peter, godfather, originally vocative, the name naturally occurring most frequently in invocations, which comes from Deus, meaning god, from the root Dieu, to shine, in derivatives, sky, heaven, god, plus Peter, father, in the sense of male head of the household. So it has nothing to do with Baal.
Okay, so then what about Zeus? What do you say about Zeus?
Zeus is the same, but we can look it up.
That's because that's what I read online.
Here
so
we
I
go.
don't know.
Zeus, supreme god of the ancient Greeks and masters of the others, 1706, from Greek Proto-Indo-European, Deus, meaning god, from the root Dieu, to shine, in derivatives, sky, heaven, or god. So it actually has the same origins.
Yeah. Okay, but how does this not correlate down to Baal? How is this proving me wrong, though?
Well, you said that the word came from Baal, but it has absolutely nothing to do with Baal.
If you keep going down, keep going down in
Proto-Indo-European's the bottom.
translation.
Okay. Like Proto-Indo-European is the bottom. And by the way, as a point, the word Baal is unrelated to Proto-Indo-European. Like it comes from a different language family.
Okay. I see. I didn't know that. From what I read, that's what I read. I read that all of these gods translate down to these fallen angels, and that Odin would be the only difference because he translates down to a different fallen angel, which would be the leader of them.
Okay, but that's not true. Like the etymology just doesn't check out. We just checked this for 2 of your claims, and we could check it for more, but it would be the same thing.
Okay, you know what? That's fair. Now, do you have a question for me?
Well, yeah. What would be the most compelling reason I should believe in whatever god you believe in?
Because, in my opinion, if you look at multiple forms of text, you look at the Bible, you look at do you know what the Book of Enoch is?
Yeah, I do. It's an apocryphal Jewish text.
Yeah, the Ethiopian church uses that. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church uses that as one of their 81 Bibles.
Sure.
Okay, if you look at all these texts and you start noticing patterns in between all these texts that start to correlate with each other, and they start to meet to an objective, which is God in the end, technically.
What? Can you repeat that?
Yeah, all these texts, all these books, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all different in essence, but in the end, all of them have correlations with each other that come down to God.
Well, they're religious
and to
books,
the
so
existence
yes,
of God.
they're religious books, so yes, they would make that claim.
Yeah. Well, all of history has these books. So how can you not make that claim?
Different cultural histories have different stories that point to different things.
Yeah, but they all ultimately come down to the same thing, in my opinion.
How familiar are you with, Hopi religious traditions? How
I'm
familiar
not
are you
super
with
familiar with
Australian
it, but I have heard about
indigenous religious traditions? They have different religious traditions that don't point to some monotheistic or even some polytheistic version of a god.
And then maybe you wonder to yourself why these people are where they are at today and not with the rest of the world.
Oh my god, we're doing racism. Okay. Nope, we're not doing that. Not doing that shit. Not doing that. Whew. That went real quick. By the way, George, again, thank you. I'm still thinking about it. That means I'm literally gonna go activate my free trial license today. Which means that a paper that I'm working on will be able to do more with it sooner. All right, let's talk to intergalactic object. Intergalactic object. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. What god do you believe in?
So I'm generally a Muslim, but my ultimate goal is to have to convince you that rather God exists rather than an ultimate religion.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So what would be the most compelling argument you could give me that such a thing exists?
Well, first I would like to start with how do you define a god in your
You might
views or perspectives?
look, so like I might define a god in a different way than you would, but you're the one trying to convince me of something. So why don't we just work with whatever definition you're using?
So how I would like to define God is a God is any system which integrates all information in the universe, and it perhaps has control all over the observables. It has experiences it recursively, and is self-originating or self-sustaining, perhaps.
So I have a few questions just so I can clarify on this definition. So it integrates all information. What do you mean by integrates here?
So it perceives all of the knowledge or all of the universe in its existence,
So
and
does it
it's
have
distorted all over the place.
so does this require a mind, or would it be enough to be like a computer?
Perhaps you could say it works as a mind, or it is
Okay.
self-conscious.
Okay, so it's a mind that integrates all available information. And then
Yeah.
what was the second part of your definition?
Well, it experiences itself recursively, so
Can you explain what you
perhaps
mean by that?
um I would love to. Okay, so we know what a distortion is, right? So perhaps God works as an energy, which
Oh no.
is certainly not a man in the sky, rather an energy that is distorted all over the universe.
Well, so I don't understand what that has to do with experiences itself recursively.
We can come at later because I have some things
Well,
prepared.
but that was the second part of your definition. I'm just trying to understand what
Yeah.
your definition is.
Yeah, we're just going to skip that for a second because
We can't skip part of
right
your
now.
definition. You gotta explain it to me.
Wait, I do not have a specific answer for that yet, because I'm trying to define God perhaps mathematically.
Okay, so you don't want to include that in your definition. Fine. And what was the
Yeah.
third piece of your definition?
It has casual control over all observables and
Okay, so it has
everything.
causal control over all observables. Do you mean observables in
Yeah.
the quantum mechanics sense?
Also, that you could, if you could include that perhaps.
Okay. Um, and so, and there was a fourth piece that it's self-originating?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, all right, so why should I think that such a thing exists?
Okay, so it's realistic to think that it's certainly not a man who is hovering around is in the sky
Sure.
who is all good and has all of the power in the universe, and we can come up to a conclusion that it might not be true because as we see in the world there is chaos happening and
Right.
God is
But
not
intergalactic,
doing
I'm
anything
not
about it.
asking you to defend a god that you don't believe in. So why don't you make an
Yeah.
argument for the thing that you want to convince me of, not for the thing that you don't want to convince me of?
Well, the thing is that I think it might be a giant hoax, perhaps not in a respectable way. So what I would think my religion offers is not the God that exists.
Look,
Perhaps it
intergalactic,
is.
you came on to try to convince me that a god exists. I asked you
Yeah.
what you meant by god. You gave me this definition. So now I'm just asking, what's the argument that that thing that you described by the definition exists?
Well, I have mathematical proofs. Perhaps you might want to see
Okay.
that.
What's
But
the
I
mathematical
cannot.
proof?
So I define perhaps a Hilbert space representing all possible quantum states in the
Sure.
observable, and I also defined a space-time distortion scalar field governing curvature-induced conjecture
Sorry,
localization.
curvature
So
induced
that's
what? You cut out.
curvature cognitive localization.
So you have a scalar field that repeat that? Curvature
So
induced
a
cognitive
space-time
localization?
distortion. Yeah, so a space-time distortion scalar field governing curvature-induced cognitive localization. So that's
Curvature
from
induced
a
cognitive localization.
yeah.
Why is it a scalar field?
Um,
What's
I
the
could
what's
give
the
you the
evolution equation?
definition.
What's the evolution
Um,
equation?
so the evolution equation is delta to of x to the power of how do I say this? I mean I could show you a picture of it, but I don't think I can say it because
So
kind of
intergalactic object. Could you define for me what a Hilbert space is?
um Not really. Okay, so
Okay, then
Hilbert
I don't
space.
trust anything you're saying after that point.
Okay.
Did you how much of this did you get from AI,
I did get some parts of it from AI. Yeah.
including the Hilbert space, the scalar field governing
Yeah.
curvature-induced
No,
cognitive
the
location, that
scalar
stuff?
no the scalar field distortion field is something that I managed to do.
Okay, and the what kind of equation is it?
The equation
The
it's
governing
partly
equation for the
theoretical.
scalar field.
It's partly theoretical.
Sorry, one more time? Partly
It is
theoretical?
partly theoretical, yeah.
That's not what I asked. What kind of equation? Is it a linear system of equations? Is it a homological relationship? Is it like what kind of equation is it?
I would say it's yeah, you could say it's a linear systematic equation, yeah.
So it's not a classical field. It's not a scalar field
No.
then.
It is really weird how you are describing it, because if you do not see the proofs, then I don't think you'll understand, perhaps.
I sus uh intergalactic object, if you don't mind me asking, what formal education do you have in mathematics?
I don't think I can hear you.
If you don't mind me asking, what formal education do you have in mathematics?
Well, I'm still in high school, so I would say none.
Oh, you can't be on here anyway. You have to be 18 plus. But yeah, that was AI slop. Absolutely. By the way, we just got a $50 Cash App from. Not gonna read your full name. Thank you. Thanks for the steams, and I appreciate that. Look. So right now, my TikTok income is being diverted, and we're doing pretty well considering being diverted to the Maple funding project. So I appreciate you guys. And we also do have some super chats to read. From Kevin Lester, I'm agnostic with the $5. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you. All right. Wait, let's bring up another guest from TikTok. By the way, remember to like the live. If you're watching on TikTok, like the live. Share the live. Get more people in here. All of these lovely things. Okay, so DSC Chronicles. DSC Chronicles is spamming. Let's let the spammer. We always let spammers up. Letting spammers up is quality. That's how we get good content, y'all. DSC Chronicles.
All right.
What you got for me? What god do you believe in?
I'm a Christian.
Okay, and
I believe in the Christian God, Jesus
Great.
Christ.
Sure. What is the most compelling argument you could give me, or evidence that you could give me that would convince me that that's true?
All right. So I believe there are two ways to argue this: history and the arrangement of the universe itself.
Okay, which one do you think is more compelling?
All right. Let's start with the universe at large.
Sure. Yeah.
So I would define God as the creator of heaven, earth, and whatever has existed and will exist, all can be traced back to God, the initial creator. So
that's a fine
I
definition.
believe that everything in the universe that has order, everything in the universe that has order, everything with a pattern, anything that has life or some sort of symmetry can be used as proof to qualify the existence of God.
So is it just so I'm understanding? Is it your claim that anything that has order or symmetry or life, those things are indicative of a thing being created?
Yes, they all are. Every single thing that could have order, everything that exists.
Right. Is God alive?
Yes, God is alive.
So you would say that God is created?
No, he wasn't created.
But you said that anything that has these properties is created.
Yeah, everything that was created.
Well, but then how do we figure out if things were created?
Because everything comes from a single point. Or are you, do you want to push the point that not everything was created? Do you believe that there were some things that weren't created?
Yeah,
Because
I
I
don't
believe that.
I don't hold the position that everything was created. No.
Okay, so could you give me examples of things that weren't created?
The electron field.
Okay, so they weren't created, and what's your basis for this?
Well, we've never seen it be created. We have no evidence that it was created. In fact, we have evidence that it's always existed. At least insofar as the universe
it did
existed,
exist
so...
even. Okay, so the universe did start to exist at some point, yeah?
I'm not sure I believe that. In fact, I don't believe that. I don't
Do you
think that there's
believe in
ever
the
been a
Big Bang
state
theory?
that... Sure. The Big Bang has nothing to do with
You
the
do?
origins of the universe, though.
Okay, so what is the Big Bang?
The Big Bang is a description of the rapid expansion of the universe from a small state about 13.8 billion years ago.
Okay, so the Big Bang didn't create the universe. The Big Bang had always existed.
At least we have no reason to think so. No, it didn't. The Big Bang was just an event. Now, maybe that there was something before that event. It may have been that there wasn't something before that event. We don't have any evidence pointing either way.
Okay, so that means that since you can't prove there is an event that was before the Big Bang, if I were to come up with a logical syllogism that would state and would be valid to prove that indeed that event was created via Occam's razor, my definition should be preferred, right?
Well, you wouldn't even need Occam's razor. If you have a syllogism, then that would be deductively true. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So my basis for thinking that God did create the universe is through the fact that something that has existed, for something to exist, it must come from a source. It's a causal relationship we've seen throughout the entirety of the universe. That everything
for something to exist, it must
from
come
a
from a
cause.
source. That's your view. That's
Yes,
premise
exactly.
one.
Yes.
So before we move on, I just want to investigate this premise. Does God exist?
All right. Does God? Yeah, he does exist.
So does God come from a source?
No, he didn't. He does not come from a source.
So then it's not true that if something exists, it comes from a source.
He exists outside what we can perceive as our own plane. So he is not a part of that relationship.
Okay, so there are just exceptions to this?
Okay, let me put it like this. If, as a three-dimensional being that you are, if there was someone in a higher dimension that created this plane, he wouldn't have necessarily come from a source now, because the plane...
Hold on, are we just pivoting off of the syllogism that we were doing? Because you were doing a syllogism,
this is
right?
on the
And that was your
syllogism.
first, first premise?
Yeah, yes. But then you attacked the fact that God must have come from a source, right? Didn't you?
No, well, I was just asking, does your first premise have an exception?
It doesn't. Okay, it does not have an exception. On our plane, it does not have an exception.
Well, hold on. So you're saying
plane.
on our plane. So does it have an exception off our plane?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so why should I accept the principle as being true then? It sounds like you're just saying, well, you could change the principle, you could change the premise and say, in our physical universe, everything that exists comes from a source.
Yes.
Okay, I might even agree with you that within our physical universe, anything that exists comes from a source. I might even agree with you on that.
Exactly. So that's why I put up, the reason I brought up dimensionality is because on this plane, we can't observe anything that is above, right? Physically, we are unable to perceive the existence of higher beings. So if there was in our reality a causal relationship like there is that would pertain to everything that is on that plane, it would be logically exempt to the higher dimensional being. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Just to be clear, your argument is just saying that things within the universe have a source. It doesn't mean that the universe has a source.
Yes. No. I said things within the universe has a source. The universe itself does have a source.
Oh, well,
But
that's
for
the thing that
someone
hold on.
outside the dimension,
That's the thing that you're trying to prove. And your first premise doesn't apply to the universe as a whole.
my first premise does apply to the. Okay, I probably didn't specify. Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Let
please,
me
you
restate
restate
the
your first
premise.
premise. Go ahead.
All right. So everything that does exist in the universe as a totality, does come from a source because
Wait, hold
it's
on.
in
What's the
of
first
itself.
premise? Can you repeat very precisely
That's
what is the first premise?
everything that exists, the universe in its totality comes from a source. That's my
So
first
premise
premise.
1, the universe and its totality comes from a source. Okay, why should I accept that premise?
Yes. Because everything we can see in the universe does indeed come from a source.
Well, but now that's a part whole fallacy. You're saying that because everything within the universe comes from a source, that means that the universe as a whole comes from a source. But that just doesn't follow.
Why doesn't it follow?
So for example, everything that makes up my body is microscopic, but I am not microscopic. It's a part whole fallacy. Also known as, I guess, a composition fallacy.
Okay. So let me ask you this. If, as you say, it is a composition fallacy, then let me try to use another angle to tackle this. If I
So
say
we're just pivoting off of
everything
this
in
premise,
the
right?
universe, yeah, exactly. We're using this
Okay, go
premise.
ahead.
No, we are not. We're still on the premise. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So everything that does exist, comes from a source, as we can see in the universe. Now, stay with me. Calm down. Everything that we can see in the
Tell me to
universe
calm
does
down,
come from a
bud.
source.
Don't tell me to calm down. Everything that we can see in the
No,
universe does come from a
I
source.
just don't want to be interrupted.
I mean,
Yeah.
is that the
Okay,
premise?
we both agree on that, right?
That I'm not even
No,
sure
I
I
want to
agree
know
with
if we
that.
both agree on that.
I'm not even sure if I agree with that. No, it depends on
No,
whether
you-
or not like if by see you mean like can like see with our eyeballs, or if we can like detect it, because there are surely things that we can detect that we have no reason to think come from a source. They seem to be fundamental. On the other hand, if by come from you mean like they didn't exist and then they did exist, well, I don't think anything has gone that way. I don't think anything has popped into existence. So yeah, like I don't think I agree with that claim.
Okay, so the universe is eternal. Is
By the
your
way,
point?
it sounds like I should just talk to your coach rather than like it seems like your coach is the like I could just talk to him.
No, he's a friend that's beside me. He was watching the live too, so like he also wanted to like pivot to. He wanted to say some things, but don't mind him. Just talk to me. Your
Okay.
point is that the universe is indeed eternal.
No, not necessarily. There could be a first moment and yet still exist a timeless universe in some sense causally before that. Or I suppose metaphysically before that, a timeless universe. That's
So
possible, in which case
one
it would not be eternal.
Okay, but which one? What is your stance on this? What's your own stance?
I'm pretty agnostic on it, but I do lean towards the universe having always existed.
All right, so your stance is the universe is eternal.
Yeah, I lean that way.
So, meaning that, what was this point? If you believe the universe is eternal, then what would that mean for time generally? Because if time indeed was always eternal, then that would mean there would have been an infinite moment from the past to this point, which obviously isn't.
Wait, what do you mean there
So-
would have been an infinite moment from the past? Infinity is not a number.
If the universe is indeed eternal, which is infinite, it means from every single point there would be an infinity of points leading up to that point. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, both to the past and to the future. There would be an infinite number of points both in the past and future, definitely.
Exactly. So from this moment to whatever past, there would be an infinite point, because
Yep.
in infinity
and
from one
this
point
moment and from this moment to the future there would be there would be an infinite an infinite amount of moments in the future as well. Sure.
But we can obviously see that that isn't the case, can't we?
That's not clear at all. How can we obviously see that?
So there's an infinite amount of time between now and the next second.
No, there's a finite amount of time between now and the next second. It's 1 second.
So how does your definition hold true if there isn't infinite times from every point to another point, even though that's what the universe is trying to represent? As you said, if the universe is
duration, do you mean infinite duration, or do you mean like infinite moments? Because those are different things.
Infinite duration, infinite moments, infinite
yeah, so there's an infinite,
as long as
there are an infinite moments, there's an infinite number of moments between now and 5 minutes ago, right? But that's a finite duration. Now, all I'm saying when I say that the universe has always existed, or the universe is eternal, all I'm saying is that there was never a first day. There's never a first moment.
It means it has always existed, right? It means from infinity to this point, from whatever point, it had always existed.
It means that yes, that there was a day before yesterday. There was a day before yesterday and a day before that, and you can keep going forever.
Okay, so essentially, what you're saying is, what I'm saying is, since there had been an infinite amount of time to this point, there should also have been an infinite amount of duration.
I don't know what you mean by has been an infinite amount of time. Look, the way that we measure durations is we measure it between 2 points in time. So if you pick any 2 points in time in an eternal universe, the amount of time passed between them will be finite.
But then, infinity divided by any number aside infinity is infinity.
I don't see what that has to do with anything. Also, infinity is not a number, so you can't divide it by anything.
Yeah, but like in the explanations, the explanations I used to learn, the teacher usually said infinity is that large that you can divide by any finite number and it's still infinity.
Well, your teacher was oversimplifying things for you. Infinity is not a number. You can't divide it by anything. It's not a number.
Okay, so it's a point.
No, it's not a point either. It's a concept.
Okay, but the concept does hold that any portion inside. Okay.
You cut out.
I said the concept does hold that any amount of durations inside that concept would still be infinite because there is no way to measure.
No, I mean, like, think about this. Like,
Can you look down?
Yeah. So, sorry, 1 sec. I think I need to move my thing over. So, how many numbers are there?
Real number. There are an infinite amount of numbers.
Right, but how many? So I'm talking about like integers. How many integers are there?
There's still an infinite amount of integers.
How many integers are and yet how many integers are there between the numbers 3 and 6?
There are 3 numbers.
Well, I mean, there's 2 numbers, there's 4 and 5. But yeah, the point is even though there's an infinite number of integers, there's still, between any 2 integers, there's always a finite distance between them. And that's all I'm saying is applying to our universe. Even though our universe extends forever in both directions to the past and future, if you pick any 2 points in that infinite duration, or in that infinite span of time to the left or to the past and to the future, you'll always find a finite duration between them.
All right. So your point on the universe being eternal indeed does hold that there can't be an infinite amount of time. There will be a finite amount of time between moments. All right, so understood. Let's move back to the initial premise.
Okay.
So my initial premise was that everything did in fact come from a source, because that's how entropy and causality works. And since you're vying for
Wait, hold
an
on.
infinite
You
universe,
can't just say that's how entropy and causality works and then not justify that.
causality is literally cause and effect. For every effect, there must have been a cause.
Causality is a relation. So causality in the scientific sense, at least in the physics sense, is a relationship between two space-time events. Causality has nothing to do with cause and effect if we're talking about physics. Cause and effect hasn't been in physics for the last 500 years, 400 years maybe.
But that's like the most basic definition of causality you'd get anywhere. The effects relating to a cause. I mean, you can look it up. It's like
Well,
the
yeah,
first thing.
That's like a philosophical notion, but it's not relevant for physics.
So you don't think causes mean effects, bring about effects?
I don't know what a cause is supposed to be. We don't talk about causes in physics. We don't talk about effects in physics. We talk about dynamical systems.
But you follow Newton's first law.
Newton's
that
first law
literally
doesn't say
shows the
anything about
relationship
cause and
between
effect.
an object shall
Newton's
remain
first law
at rest.
is the law of inertia. Newton's first law is that
Yeah.
momentum is conserved.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
An
cause
object
and effect
will
in
stay at
momentum
rest.
conservation.
What is a cause? What is a cause?
I don't know, you tell me. It's not a physics concept. At least it hasn't been for a few hundred years.
A cause is the initiator of an action. Is what causes an action. It is
Okay, so
the
tell me.
initiator of an action, essentially.
Great, so tell me, what is the cause for the effect of radioactive decay?
For the effect. We're just talking about Newton's first law.
Well, I brought up radioactive decay because it's a clear, evident example of something that doesn't have a cause.
I'm not a physicist. Look it up. Explain it to me. Explain the concept to me. Let's see if we can work something out.
Yeah, so the cause of, say, a uranium atom splitting in two, well, there isn't one, right? The whole business of it is that it's, at least in the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, it is a purely random, undeterministic, causeless event. There's not something that makes the uranium atom split in two. I mean, you can force it to split in two by like shooting it with another neutron, but like when it's just sitting there and it just collapses, or it just decays rather, it doesn't split in two on its own. If it's just sitting there and then it decays, there's no cause for that decay. It's a probabilistic thing that just happens.
So, okay, I looked it up, and radioactive decay is the process where unstable atomic nuclei spontaneously lose energy by emitting radiation.
Yep,
This process
spontaneously.
transforms the original nucleus into different nucleus, which is often more stable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so essentially, they do rise to an effect, which is
Yep.
splitting into two.
Yep,
But
it's
you're saying that
you
there
can call it
isn't.
an effect. What's the cause?
You said we can cause it by shooting at it or by giving it energy, right?
So we can induce fission, but radioactive decay is not the same as induced fission. One's like a thing that just happens on its own. The other one is something that like we can do to it.
Okay, so let me get a little
In fact,
philosophical
actually,
here.
So one of the definitions of spontaneous is occurring without cause.
Occurring without cause.
Yeah.
Well, that is true, sure. But there is nothing that does not come without some form of cause. That is
a metaphysical
for radioactive
claim
decay now.
That's a metaphysical claim, and
Exactly.
you need to prove it.
That's a medical. All right. So this uranium atoms needed to have existed before they could have this ability, right? So in a sense, that is their cause.
No,
for that
that's the
action.
cause.
Cause is different.
No, it's not.
Mhm.
It's not a sufficient cause. It's not a. I mean, maybe it's a necessary cause. But when we talk about cause and effect, we're talking about sufficient causes. And a sufficient cause is the thing that if it's present, will force the effect to happen. But there is no such thing that forces the spontaneous decay of radioactive atoms.
Okay, would you agree that different
Right?
substances have different causes for their effects? Yeah.
Well, look, this is one of the reasons why I reject the notion of cause and effect. I don't think it's a useful notion. I don't think it's a useful metaphysical notion. So no, I don't think so, actually. But if you want to make that claim, then you have to show that it's a relevant and useful metaphysical category. And to do that, you'd have to show it applies to all things. That would
It
at
does
least be the
apply
first
to
step.
all things.
That's the claim that you have to prove.
Yeah. And I'm saying it does indeed apply to all things. All things do indeed need to exist.
What is the sufficient cause for radioactive decay?
Okay. And I define cause as the initiator of an event, right?
Right. There is
That
no
was my
initiator
definition.
for the radioactive decay.
And now, initiator can span from different things. There is the most active initiator, the one you are probably very aware of, the one that you're probably very fond of. And then what can technically qualify for an initiator does not necessarily have to be physical. The existence of these uranium atoms in of itself is a cause, is an initiator for this splitting of the nuclei. Another thing that could
By the way,
something that
that's a terrible notion of the word cause, because that would mean that you could correctly say, like, let's say that you have a child, and then your child grows up and they, I don't know, light a hospital on fire. Well, then, under your definition of the word cause, you could say that somebody could say that you caused the hospital to be lit on fire, because you are the thing that initiated your child's existence.
Indeed.
And
that is a correct. It's a logical.
So to be clear, does that mean that if your child lights a building on fire, let's say that they're 30 years past, they're 30 years old, and then your child lights a hospital on fire, I would be correct if I said that you caused it?
That would be a valid logical syllogism. That I did cause it, because the relationship.
That's not a syllogism. That's just a tautology given the definition you've given, and I don't think that that's a particularly useful definition of cause then, because typically, and like maybe you're using cause in another way, but typically by cause we mean something that forces the effect to happen. Namely, colloquially, we might say that the reason why, perhaps the reason why I got sick was because the cause for the effect of me getting sick was me eating rotten fish. And so it was the rotten fish and the rotten fish alone that led to me getting sick. The rotten fish forced me to get sick. That would be the cause. It wouldn't be correct to say that the cause of me getting sick was my mother giving birth to me. That's just not how people typically use
language.
Why
would that be incorrect? That's not how people tend to use the language. I understand that now.
If you want to use cause and effect to mean just like the thing that originates it and has nothing to do with the effect, you can, but then that has nothing to do with like a traditional notion of cause and effect. So yeah, if you want to say that cause and effect exists, fine. But then I would just say that not everything has a cause. Like, why must it?
The thing is, you're trying to initiate the fact that cause is force, is coercive. Cause can also be persuasive. I hope you're aware of that.
Well, yeah, but what persuasion is just coercion without violence.
Exactly. It's coercion without an active force, right?
Right, but it still is the sufficient cause for the effect. So when you say cause, you just mean necessary cause.
Yeah, I'm talking about I'm talking about a necessary cause, a contributive cause. That's exactly what I'm
Okay.
talking about.
Yeah, so why should I
And
believe that?
going
Why should I
back to
believe
your
that everything
radioactive
has such a
decay,
thing? So if you mean a necessary cause, I agree that one of the necessary
because
causes for the radioactive decay is the existence of, the star that gave birth to the atom, for example. That would be a necessary cause.
okay, so I'm glad you understand that then. Also, on the radioactive decay, I just searched now and I found out it's caused by the instability of an atom's nucleus. And
Right, so
that
that's
results in
so
the
to be
spontaneous
clear,
emission of energy.
so that doesn't explain why it decays when it decays. That's just describing a feature of the atom that explains why it decays, period. The question is, why does it happen when it happens? What's the cause of it happening when it does? That's the thing that's uncaused.
When it does, that's the cause.
Yeah, so
your
for
question
example,
is, why does it happen?
So we're looking for an explanation. A cause is a type of explanation, right? And so we're looking for an explanation for why did the uranium atom decay now rather than 5 minutes ago? That's the question that we don't know the answer to. And that's because there isn't an answer to it. It's a statistical, spontaneous, and ultimately, at least as far as we can tell, undeterministic thing.
Well,
I can still hear your
for
friend,
the
by the
things
way,
that we have,
even though he's whispering.
I know you can hear him.
Okay, just
I know
letting
you
you know.
can hear him. I'm not exactly.
Okay, I'm just letting you know.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So what I'm asking is, yeah, indeed, this we can't explain why it did happen now rather than 5 minutes ago. But then again, that's not exactly the point.
Well, no,
Because
that's the thing I was talking
it's
about.
now without. I understand that. I'm saying that's not exactly the point because, okay, now that we have the particular cause, humans generally have been attributing this thing just being like this. For example, the earth being flat being the consensus before people started realizing the earth was round, to things that they don't have enough information on. So why should this be a different case? Why should we not just attribute this to lack of information rather than
That's
a statistic
that's a science of the gaps argument, right? Like you're just saying, well, we're gonna, we just don't know, but we'll know in the future, like.
Exactly.
But no, that's a fallacy. That's fallacious reasoning.
How is that a fallacy? What fallacy is that?
It's a God of the gaps fallacy, except you're applying it to scientific understanding. I suppose you could call it inductive, like you could call it an inductive fallacy if you wanted to.
Dr. Blitz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How's it going?
If I had a cancer and I died today instead of 2 days ago, would you say I did not die because I was suffering from the disease of cancer, since we cannot determine why exactly it was at
we could talk about
that I died and not today?
So we could talk about the explanation for why you died, and we could certainly say cancer. There's a second question, or a separate question, which is, why did you die today, rather than why did you die yesterday? Or why didn't you die yesterday?
Exactly. But
that's a separate question that has a separate explanation.
We know the reason I died was because I had a cancer.
That's the reason why you died. But if we want to go, but that's not the reason why you died today rather than yesterday.
I'm trying to make an argument to explain the position concerning why we cannot determine what exact time I died or what exact time something happened. I believe it is a more reasonable argument to make that we just don't have enough information, because if we did have all the information in the system, we would reasonably be able to deduce exactly why such a thing happened, because everything happened because of factors.
I mean, that's a metaphysical claim, and it's not and it's not what I'm willing to grant, by the way.
No, it is not metaphysical. It's not
it absolutely
metaphysical.
Is.
You can
that everything has an
okay.
Has an explanation.
Aside radioactive decay. No. Aside radioactive decay, give me 4 more examples of things.
Basically any quantum behavior is like this.
Any quantum behavior is causeless.
Yeah, essentially.
Just give me one example of that so that I can.
One example.
Because I'm not very versed in this, so I can look it up and be
Yeah,
convinced.
so a good example would be the outcome of a spin measurement on a superposed electron in a lab, for example.
Outcome of a what? I'm sorry.
So if you're measuring the spin of an electron in a laboratory setting,
Okay.
and the initial configuration of the electron was in a superposition of spin up and spin down, the outcome of the spin measurement is undetermined. It is not. It has no explanation.
So it happens at random.
Yes, at least as far as we can tell.
And there is no extent of why do you make that argument, at least as far as we can tell currently?
Oh, because
isn't
I'm
that
humble.
like a science of the gaps argument?
No, I'm just
Okay,
being humble.
because you are humble.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, look, I don't know
But
everything.
you do. Okay, but you
So-
do understand that there is a chance that we don't have enough information to qualify our stance on the fact that
Yeah.
there is indeed no cause concerning this, since
Yeah,
most other
it's
phenomenon, Wait,
It's absolutely possible.
can I?
But
Let me
that
just
doesn't mean it's true.
Exactly, it is possible, but I'm trying to make an argument that if we notice that in this particular system, like you mentioned stuff about quantum systems generally, like I don't know exactly what you're saying, but you said stuff about quantum systems and how most of those things don't have causes. So
Yep.
is it not reasonable to infer from the fact that just in this category of things, since most of the other things that we have experienced by scientific empirical research and all of that have had causes, they have had actual causes that we can relate to the events and use as explanations to, like, that's basically the doctrine of science. So if we notice that in this particular category there is no cause, is it not enough for us to actually agree that maybe, since there is overwhelming evidence that in most other categories there has been a cause, like by inference, I'm not trying to say for sure, because absolutely nothing is for sure, almost nothing. As we get more information, we get more enlightened concerning matters. So is it not enough for us to say at least there is a very good chance that we just do not have enough information concerning this factor?
So look, if you have that position, then you would be in the good company of Albert Einstein, who held that position in the 30s. And I think he held that position until he died. Unfortunately, this was one of the things that he was wrong about. People have done rigorous mathematical like deductions. People have done very, very sophisticated experiments in an attempt to either figure out whether there exist so-called hidden variables. These are the things that you would be referring to, these kind of like causes that we can't detect. And in fact, you can experimentally prove that there are no local hidden variables. Now, you could say that, well, maybe there are like kind of global hidden variables, and you could say that, but then you have to accept that, that means, like, one of the consequences of this is that if there are global hidden variables, that you have that special relativity is false, that things can, or that information can travel faster than light, etc., that you lose locality. And so look, so I mean, like, you could say, yes, there should be hidden variables, we just don't know about them. But then you lose out on another law of physics, which, we have good reason to think is always true. So you can't have both. You can't always have cause and effect, and then also always have that the speed of light is the universal speed limit. You just don't get both.
Wait,
both have experimental evidence.
You said the laws of physics, you believe them to always be true. Was that what you said? I
don't think I said that I believe the laws of physics are always true. I don't think I said that.
Okay, you don't believe the laws of physics are always true.
I think that the laws of physics as we know them now are like a good approximation to reality.
So you believe in the making of approximations, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, like, physics isn't done. It's not like we can declare tomorrow we've discovered all of the laws of physics, and therefore there's no more physics to be done. Like, no, there's always more stuff to learn.
It should mean that you believe that we can reach conclusions by inference. Doesn't that logically flow?
So inference
that we can
and
reach
induction
reasonable
are different
conclusions
things.
by inference.
Inference and induction are different things. So
but science, the entirety of science is induction, because
sure.
science cannot test all
one of the things that we've deduced using the scientific method is that there are no local hidden variables. That's been experimentally demonstrated at this point.
So
Local hidden variables being the things that would cause spontaneous decay, by the way.
electrons in the observable universe were tested, and it was found through that deductive test that there are no hidden variables. Is that what you're saying?
No, you can
Because that is
mathematically
what a deductive test would be.
No, so what you
That
can
is
do
what
is
a
you
deductive test would be.
please, I was explaining. So what you can do is you can
Okay.
use mathematics to deductively show that if there exists local hidden variables, then the outcome of certain experiments should obey a certain inequality. Meaning that when you measure something, when you run a certain experiment, you can deductively show that if there are hidden variables, then you will never get a number bigger than 2 in this case for the Bell type experiments. And so then they go and they run the experiment and they get 2.5. So this is a deductive proof that there are no local hidden variables.
Okay, so my argument is this: we cannot place a an argument for the beginning of the universe and how everything came about on something that is as exceptional as this case seems. Do you agree that there are more phenomenon
This is the
that
fundamental
accounts
physics.
for?
No. Everything else that we think is an
my question
approximation.
is, do you agree that there are more phenomenon that accounts for causes and effects than there are for?
No. Everything is fundamentally quantum. Except maybe gravity. Maybe. You there? Hello? Did he just... Can you guys hear me? Oh, he left. Okay, well, he left. There is somebody who I promised I would bring up, so I have to skip over some people. Just B, how's it going? Just B, you're on. By the way, remember to like the live, send this out to people that you think would also enjoy the live. It's a great way to get people engaged and having a conversation. Just B, can you hear me? Hello? I can't hear you, Just B. Oh, he's gonna leave and come back. Is it using your headphone mic again? It shouldn't be. Let me double check. No, it's using my mic. All right. Just B, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Great. So, I said I would bring you up. I don't remember why, but I definitely remember your name. So, what god do you believe in? Just B, you can't listen to me from YouTube. You have to listen to me from the app that you're currently talking to me on.
Through the direct comms.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you through the live.
Okay. You can't be listening to me through YouTube. And you should mute the live stream.
Say that again.
Can you mute the live stream?
Just be, you can't listen to me from YouTube. You have to listen to me from the app that you're currently talking to me on. It's not working to listen to you. Yes.
My mic is triggering, so you.
Okay, just
mute.
give me a sec. I'll sort it out. You should mute the live stream.
Okay.
Okay, I'll fix it right now. Can you mute the live stream? Yes, I'm muting it.
Okay. Can you hear me? This isn't super intuitive if you've never used the website, so I can understand. But well, it's because he's listening through the YouTube live stream. And the YouTube live stream is delayed by like 5 or 10 seconds or something. Oh. Welcome back. Welcome back. Can you hear me, Just B? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you all right.
Okay, great.
Apparently
Great.
some communications headphones.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. Okay, so what God do you believe in?
I do not necessarily believe in God. It's more about having faith in God. It's, for example, to believe in something, you need to see that it is there. And I believe everybody needs to see. Many people see through signs. So, for example, they go out of their house, they pray, they need wealth, and signs show them that what they need to do is this, and they eventually get wealth. Then they have belief. Faith is a different thing. It's more about you need to have it yourself, because the thing is, anytime a person goes to church, sometimes they are doubting whether the power or the higher power is there. So
Right,
for them to have faith,
so what God do you believe in?
I know the Christian God is there. I've been at church before, but I don't necessarily have faith anymore. It's more like,
well, but then
I
why'd you
know
want to come
he's
up?
there. It's because I want to have this discussion to prove that he is there. Although I know he is there, I have no doubt about it. I have no doubt that there is a God. But it is about having faith. For example, like if you go to Christianism, if you go to Buddhist, if you go to people in different countries, like I'm not sure if it's Afghanistan or Iraq, they have their own views on their gods and they suppress people because of them. I do believe in the power that is backing them and the power that they believe in, because I can clearly see that it is there in the world.
Okay, right. Okay, I follow.
Faith in it?
I follow. Okay, so what's the most compelling argument you could give me that would convince me that God exists?
It is more about God does exist to me, but the thing is, it's about you having faith in what he is basically talking about.
Hold on.
For example, you don't.
Just be. Hold on. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth now. On the one hand, you say that you don't have faith. You just know God exists. Why does that mean? So why do I need to have faith in order to know that God exists?
Because it's the same thing as you're trying to explain to someone how something works, but they are choosing not to understand some facts for them to actually believe in it, because you need to make your mind be available to the information. But
why do you think I'm doing this live stream?
No, I know why you're doing the live stream. You want to understand. So I'm basically trying to get to a point in time where I can start. Because, for example, you say there's the infinity theory, as in there's infinity possibilities. Anything can be and will be. For example, if I walk out of my house, this can happen. So, for example, in this discussion, I'll act like I'll act as if I'm talking about the Christian God, of which I have had an experience in. The reasons why.
So presumably, you have some reason for why, some justification for your knowledge of God existing, right?
Yes.
So I just want to know what that justification is. Because if it's compelling to you, it's presumably compelling to me.
Can you believe do you know that the reason I believe in it, do you know that if one thing happened one time, it is not chance. If it happened twice, it is not a chance. If it happens thrice, that is not definitely something. That is something that is, how can I best explain this? I'm basically saying if you observe something happening more than 3 times, that thing becomes a fact. Because one time can be like...
that's just like folklore. That's not true, though. That's not like how we do scientific investigations.
But I'm saying when you can see something clearly happening more than 15 times, or constantly reoccurring, you can kind of bring credence to it. For example,
yeah, it's evidence. Definitely evidence. It's not proof, though.
Yeah. Yes. For example, when I started having faith, because at my church, it was a church from Zimbabwe called John Masoejishane. So when I was within that religion, I started becoming one of the people that could actually tell, and you could almost say I could have visions, and I could basically see what was happening or stuff about people. Then there were prophets that were able to interpret them. This is a religion from my country. It is very strong. For example, even without you saying something, they could tell stuff about you. For example, I could tell that your heart and this was struggling, and this, and I could have a vision. Most times, the prophet would explain what I'm basically saying to the person. It was true, and this constantly appeared every single time I went to church.
So just be look. So that may have been your experience, but you telling me about your experience is very uncompelling to me. Because I can't verify that any of that's true.
Which is fair, which is why I understand that. That is why I'm trying to get to different things. You say you want to believe in God. What is the reason you want to believe in God?
Well, if it's true, I'd like to believe true things. So
if it is true, you want to believe true things, but yet at this point of view, when you do not have solid information about something, how can you possibly, when you're talking about a higher being, you cannot interpret or try to, what do you call it, try to write down what a higher being is in essence and write them down. These are the powers of the higher being. This is what they can do. These are their limits. This is what they can do. This is their limits. Because at the point in time, if you try to subject them to science on Earth, it will never work. For example, matter, at a certain point in time when it starts getting radioactive, like uranium and stuff, we cannot have all elements that, there are some elements that can exist, but exist outside of the periodic table. But
what?
It's because they cannot sustain. You know,
what?
like, you know the periodic table, right?
Yeah.
You know, like when you put a lot of electrons, I know what I'm talking about, but because I've not spoke about it in a long time, but I'm a bit low on information, how to say it. But in the periodic table, there are elements. There are electrons, neutrons, and protons. And when you have a few electrons or protons, it basically becomes helium. And as you add more and more, the element gets higher and higher, and it becomes different. And at a certain point in time, you cannot go past that point because they think it becomes unstable.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Look, so I still don't know what your argument is. Can you give me an argument or, piece of evidence or something like this?
Can you say in your life there's points in time when you have told what is going to happen in the future?
Not in any unusual cases. Like sometimes it's just like kind of expected, like, oh, I don't know, like you'll hear about a court case and you'll be like, okay, well, obviously the evidence is really, really strong, so the person's going to be guilty. Like in cases like that, sure, but not in like kind of unusual cases where it's like not obvious.
Okay. Because it's hard to explain something to you because you clearly want the evidence,
or
but
an
you
argument.
cannot get the evidence. Okay,
yeah.
An argument. For example, if I say, if you let yourself down and if you choose to believe, even if you don't believe in anything, and you choose to let your heart be open, you're much easier to guide. So, for example, when you wake up in the morning, you automatically start doing decisions that fall out of the normal category of the ones you would normally do. And when you do them things, you see results. So when people have faith, their minds are more open to divine control. It basically means something changes. But you say you need the evidence. But to get the evidence, your mind needs to be open at the same time. That's what I'm trying to say. From what I've observed,
look, we don't, like, that doesn't work for any other belief system, right? Like, let's say that you're left wing politically. Let's say you're left wing politically, and then somebody and you're like a hardcore left winger, and then somebody shows you that if you implemented these left wing policies, that it would be disastrous for your country. And therefore, and if you implement these right-wing policies, you would, your country would flourish. And they have like hard evidence. They have like scientific evidence for this case. The person could be as hard left-wing as they want, but if they're rational, they would just be like, yeah, you're right. This is a bad view. And like, you don't have to be open to, like in order to see the evidence, you don't have to be open to the evidence. You just have to be able to see the evidence. And if the evidence is compelling enough, it should be able to convince you.
So
otherwise, it's not that compelling.
So are you saying God should work in the normal ways of physics and basically should work in a way that is able to be accounted for?
Look, so there could be like empirical evidence, like in like scientific evidence, or it could be that there's like philosophical or mathematical justification. That could be another kind of evidence. There could be personal evidence, and that's pretty compelling for a lot of people, where they like, have some sort of personal experience, and then that is enough to convince them. I'm just asking for any kind of evidence.
Okay, My basic thing is they cannot be evidence because you're dealing with a being that is so high above that when you try to interpret the stuff that he is doing, do not have the information. For example, if I start mattering on about science and computers and how they work, this is how technology works, this is how it revolutionizes the world. And if I try to share this information with something one of 1,000 generations in the past or 2,000 generations in the past, the information that I am giving is so thoroughly beyond what they believe is possible that they will start thinking that this is just something from a higher power. No matter what you do, they cannot interpret the stuff. For example, we can say right now we're able to see how gravity is working and how when space basically warps. We have two things that, okay, there's things that we can observe space now making ripples in the world. There's two places they dig their hole 1 mile this way, 1 mile that other way. And when space came in, they could
You're
basically
talking
see
about
that there was a
LIGO.
space.
Yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah, LIGO, and they basically them two labs. It's
Yep.
because we have got that technology that we can observe that phenomenon, but we
Right.
do not have enough technology to observe these phenomena.
So
For example,
just be what you're telling me. Oh, what you're telling me is that we don't have the tools to understand the
Yes.
evidence.
Yes.
And maybe that's true, but then it means that there's no evidence that you could give me that would convince me. So it means I'm
That is what I
justified
mean.
in not believing. It means it's rational to not believe.
That is what I mean. Unless if you let your mind go to the information, you will never truly believe because you need something that is rational. But yet, at the point in time when someone says something that is rational or tries to tell you their experiences, you say, where is the proof? Where is the information? And for you to actually bother going to the places and actually going and living in them circumstances, even if I tell you the stuff that I've gone through personally as a Black African person at my country, and if I send you there is no chance that you're gonna do that on a whim because you just don't. Because there is not any justification or any reasons for you to do it. And I understand people need to be rational, which I mean, you choose to believe in science, and there is some certainty in science. For example, within science, there's always an equal and opposite reaction. There's the three laws of the three states of how things should always work. I understand that you need to have justification for you to believe in something. For example, to believe in Christianity, people believe in Christianity because they believe in the message that it sends, the laws. You believe in you should not kill, you should not
So
do
my
this.
question is what should I you have someone like me, someone who values, rational discourse, somebody who values evidence, somebody who values, like strong reasoning. What kind of evidence, like if this God being exists, presumably, and if it wants me to know that it exists, presumably it would take actions, it would have arranged the world in such a way that there would be evidence that would be
Can I ask you a
convincing to
question?
me.
Why do you think God should convince you he exists?
Maybe he doesn't
Can I
care.
actually?
Maybe he doesn't care.
Yes,
If he doesn't, then
maybe
then maybe
doesn't
he
care.
wouldn't leave behind evidence.
Exactly.
But if
You
that's the
want
case, then that means that
evidence.
I'm rational to not believe if there is no evidence.
And I do not dispute that. But other people are also rational in believing it because
I never
when they
said that they
do,
weren't. Look, I never said that they weren't. I think that there are perfectly
no, no, no,
rational
no, no,
reasons
no,
to
no, no.
be to believe in God.
And I am not doubting that. I'm basically saying for people to have faith, they have observed stuff happening. For example, I'll tell you my
Yep.
experiences and the reasons I strongly have faith, but I do not have it. When I woke up in the morning, this happened a month. I could basically tell what was going to happen. Not
Wait, just
lying,
be.
by the way.
With respect, personal stories are rarely interesting and rarely compelling.
Okay,
It's
I'm
like
gonna tell you.
it's like how, have you ever tried to tell somebody about a dream you had and then they just don't care?
Yes.
When I hear personal stories, like personal stories about divine revelation or about spiritual experiences, that's what it's like to me. It's just like somebody telling me about their dream and I just don't care. Like, it's not compelling at
Oh,
all.
okay. I understand that, but I will try to make it fast so that you understand
Okay,
my own point of
please
view.
do.
So when I woke up, before I woke up, I could basically think in my head, my mother's about to call me. Then, before I say, "Mom, what did you say?" She would be like, "Oh, I was just about to call you." When I was walking, when I was about to go to the bus, normally I would be late and running to the bus and what. But these days, I was just home. I would just walk. and the bus would just get with me on exactly the same time. You could say I was aligned to it. But even when I was working at Queensgate in town where the robots were, it was almost as if the world was just working in the way I wanted to, and I was just getting to places on time. For example,
Okay.
I would work and I would basically get aligned. But these were not the signs. When I eventually went to where I pray, they basically said you're having them visions because you're one of the people that can actually see visions. This is an African religion, by the way. You can clearly see it if you go to England or Zimbabwe. You can clearly observe this happening. So when I went there, I started standing up and saying stuff. And every single time I stood
Just
up and
be
said stuff, to
like
other
I said.
people, it was
I
right. It was
I
correct.
don't care for personal testimony because it won't be compelling to me. Like it like
Okay.
look, so one, by the way, the reason, like one of the reasons I don't care is because I've heard personal testimony from every single person with every single faith under the sun, and they can't all be true. In which case, it's most rational to just say, yeah, they're all just personal experiences. Maybe they have explanations, maybe they don't, but none of them. If they're not all true, why should I accept any of them?
How can they not all be true? What makes?
Well, because some of them are directly contradictory.
In what sense?
For example, one will say like, you know, I heard a voice from the heavens saying, I, Jesus, am the one true God. And then you'll have another person say that they like, you know, they had a near-death experience where they saw Vishnu sitting on the throne of heaven. And like those two things can't both be true.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is there a god or is there multiple gods?
I don't think there's any gods.
Yes, but when people say that stuff, it's about saying, is there a god or multiple gods? For example, we have separate countries in here, and when you start interpreting that information, you say it is not justified. You hear countries like America, and this is the motherland. This is where we belong, and you hear people saying British, this is the land of our queen. This is what we believe in. And you say people are not rational because their stories do not make sense because you're trying to make it sense in one variable, but it's because they are interpreting their faiths in many areas. For example, that's why there are multiple faiths.
Look. So I think a better justification for the apparent contradictory nature of these experiences is that there is some experience that they had that their brain interpreted through their religious or through their faith-based lens. But if that's the case, then we have no reason to think that these experiences have anything to do with a god, and perhaps more have something to do with psychology.
Interesting. Very interesting. But to be fair, at the end of the day, I do have to just say this. Religions in modern days in United Kingdom and other places like America, as long as if a lot of people believe in it, it is categorized as a religion. That is the basic term. For example, the Force is a religion. So you cannot say Christianity and the Force are the same. So there are multiple religions that will always work. For example, people might say that is things Satan is doing. I understand that. But to me, my argument is Christianity does exist, the God does exist, because in the past, in the Bible, it says all this information. But in modern day, there is no big act of God trying to change stuff and trying to change civilization because he wants us personally to have faith. You might say an argument is that there is a lot of probabilities. If I go out of my room, I could take this decision and I could take the complete opposite. But at the end of the day, what I've begun to understand is you cannot always interpret the information as a human because there are limitations to what you can always take. And when you say you do not believe because you have not enough information, at a certain point in time, I understand that, and you can never truly believe in God because you stand at that viewpoint. For example, I cannot see ultraviolet light. I cannot see this, but I can see through intermediaries. You're saying but because you cannot observe it.
Look. All I'm asking for is some kind of evidence, and the evidence of other people's personal experiences are just wholly unconvincing to me. Now, if I had a personal experience, I might be religious tomorrow, but anybody telling me about their personal experience, I'm just gonna be like, okay, how do I know any of this happened? How do I know that any of this means what you think it means? Like there's like, it's just like somebody telling me about their dream. It means nothing to me. So if you have like some like archaeological evidence or scientific evidence or mathematical or philosophical evidence or justification, those things are great because those things can be related between people. Your own personal experience can't. So unless you have one of those things, it's just not, it just won't be compelling.
But to be fair, I understand what you're saying, but here's another argument I can make. Can you agree that if, for example, I say one thing, let's say there's a line of 100 people, and if I say a sentence, and if I tell the second person the sentence, and if I try to tell the third person a sentence, and the fourth, and the fifth, would you say the information at the end will be the same?
Probably not. But is this going to be an argument for the existence of a god?
Because you're trying to say you want something to relate amongst every single people, but people do not have the capability
I want something.
to say
I want
stuff.
something that we can all. I want something that like can at least in principle be verified by me. I can't
In
go
what
back
sense?
and relive your subjective experience. That's not even in principle possible. But if somebody says, ah, well, if you do this measurement in a laboratory, you get this thing, then I could in principle go do that. If you give some sort of philosophical deductive argument, then I can in principle look through the premises and work through the inference rules and check that it's true.
But in principle, if you were able to do that, then you would say this is science and this does not dispute the evidence of a god, and you would still stand with the stance. So really, there is no chance of me convincing you there is a god.
No, I mean,
Because
somebody could make an inferential, like people make the fine tuning argument all the time, and the fine tuning argument relies on scientific data, and then it makes a Bayesian argument, a probabilistic argument for the cause of the particular data that we see. And in my view, they come to the incorrect conclusion. But the point is they can at least make that argument, and that's like I don't know. Look, it sounds like you don't want to offer me like evidence that might be compelling to me.
No, it's not that. It's not that. It's because if I try to offer evidence, it is not gonna work. I can clearly see it is not gonna work with your own point of view, because
Okay.
your own point of view wants evidence.
Mhm.
But if you have the evidence, then the second thing you're gonna do is there a way to prove this wrong? And if you do go ahead and prove this wrong, if someone offers you another evidence, your own stance of view is because the other evidence has been proved wrong, I can start proving this one wrong. For example,
That's not.
you cannot.
I mean, that's a neat psychology reading that we're doing, like mind reading business.
Am I wrong in doing that?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, if the evidence is compelling, it'll be compelling. If it's not compelling, then it won't be compelling.
Okay, fair point. My argument,
Like,
Christianity.
I can actually give you an example of this happening a year ago. So, or a little bit over a year ago. Prior to a bit over a year ago, I was pretty convinced that the universe had an origin. The observable universe had an origin. That it didn't go back forever. It had an origin. And then new evidence came out, and I thought about it, and I looked at the evidence, and I'm like, oh, well, now I'm not convinced that the universe has an origin. So like that it just happens. Like, present me with evidence, and I'll change my view.
Okay. Have you ever prayed before?
Yeah.
Have you ever been an atheist? Have you been an atheist your entire life?
As far back as I can remember.
As far back as you can remember.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do any of this, but the thing I would suggest is try to, by the way, this is, you want to experience personal things that come to you. When you try to pray, don't try to pray and basically pray saying, I want an outcome or I want a revelation. Because sometimes what we want is not what we get. Because God is a guide at the end of the day. That is something that has been proven. For example, he gives the wisdom, he gives the knowledge. And when you clearly want something, do you give a kid what they want? No. That is the reality of the matter. Try to pray.
Look. So I have, and it didn't come to any conclusions.
It didn't come to any conclusion, because when you were
I was raised in a I went to like religious school like the entirety of my childhood. Like I was raised in a religious environment, so like nothing happened. Like I didn't feel moved by a spirit, right? I don't.
Okay, I understand where you're clearly coming from. You didn't feel a shift. You didn't feel as if what you were doing was right. You didn't feel like when you're praying, something was with you and suddenly pulling you to it and guiding you to it. But at the end of the day, if there was a force like that, people will be people. I'm clearly understand what you're saying, but I can clearly see if God was to act in the way you want him to act, suddenly God is forcing us to do certain things. That's how
I don't think that that's the case. But look, we've been talking for a while. I am going to move on to another guest since we've gotten.
Wait. Okay, just before you go,
Yeah, sure.
Can you tell? I just want to understand who you are as a person before you go, because that would just basically clear my mind.
Sure. What's up?
The reason you don't believe in God is because you do not have clear evidence, and you want clear evidence that you can go and do and test that is scientific, because you can only observe scientific phenomena, and that is what you clearly want.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be scientific. It could be philosophical. It could be mathematical. It could be archaeological. It could be historical. It could be personal. I just need something.
You just need something. Fair point in time. Second question: why do you want to believe in God?
Well, if God is real, well, I care about believing in real things. So I'd like to be compelled. Like I like to believe that the Earth is a sphere because the Earth is really a sphere. If the Earth was flat, I would want to believe that the Earth is flat. I want to believe things that are true.
Yeah, there's no chance of that happening. There is clearly evidence that shows that is never going to happen. For example, helicopters, people would never...
Wait, just be, you missed the point. You missed the point. The point is if God is real, then I would want to believe in that God. That's all. Because I would want to believe in real things.
But that does not both faith. Believing and faith are different.
I don't care about faith. I just want to believe that something is true, if it is true. Faith is a completely separate question.
But you say believe. Believe is the word that says you are in act basically doing what that God is saying. But
So
if you
believe...
say, is God real? Prove God is real. That is a different argument.
So a belief is just an attitude towards a proposition. Meaning it's just like you have a certain association with like a claim. And if the association is like a positive one to the claim that God is real, then we call that belief. If the claim is a negative one, then we call that disbelief. That's all belief is. But look, I am gonna let you go.
Okay.
Hopefully that explains where I'm getting at. Thanks for being here.
By the way.
Oh, I cut him off. All right, let me bring up another guest from TikTok. By the way, remember to like the live. If you're watching on TikTok, whether you're watching on TikTok, YouTube, make sure you like the live because it gets more people in here. All right, let's talk to Dominic.
Hello.
Dominic, how's it going?
What's going on? Okay, I got a very interesting argument for you. You might find compelling.
Before you continue, I forgot I should read super chats. Do you mind if I do that?
Okay, go
real
ahead.
quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So we got a lot. From Eldritch Saga with $5, we have "It's irrelevant. Things are what they are. You're wasting your life. There may be any number of truth faiths. It's a no cost all profit decision. Value your time." Okay. From YouTube Agent with the $2, we have "I don't believe in any religion, but I do in a God." Okay, thank you for the money anyway. YouTube Agent again with the $2. "There is a God. All religions are bullcrap." And then YouTube Agent again with the $2. "Theoretically, the universe is God." I love when people give me money to say that I'm wrong. That's very satisfying, by the way. From Eldritch Saga again with $5. "Choose religion or faith in accordance to your lifestyle and values. Then use religious protections to find like-minded people. God's not the point." I mean, in some sense, that's what I'm doing then, right? And then again from Eldritch Saga with the $2. "Gods exist, if only as a concept, word, or sound." I mean, fair. And then also, Ben Yehudis sent $10 on Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you. Right. Thank you to everybody who's so generous, by the way. Dominic, what you got for me?
Okay, here's my interesting proposition to you, right? So we're the argument from change, right? Which I don't think has been, which is what I think some people were trying to do, is the argument from change, right? So they're trying to say you can't get there needs to be an actualization for, like, there needs to be potential for an actualization, right? So like if I had a cup and had coffee in it, it has the potential to become cold, and there needs something to actualize it, right? And they go down, you would have to go down, what actualizes that and what actualizes that until you get to a point where there's just an actualizer with no potential, basically, right? Is kind of what the argument from change is.
Yeah, but that like presupposes like metaphysical reality of like change and actualization and like all of this,
right.
all this
like
weird like 2,000+ year old philosophy that like I don't think is super relevant anymore.
Right, because then you would have to say that basically God, like how could you say God has like he would have no potential, then he wouldn't exist because there would just be no potential at that point. So I don't think you could argue the argument from change. But what I'm trying to get at here is that I don't think you could either. And I think that, you said that radioactivity, right? The particle, there's nothing causing it to become a particle. So I would agree with you there that there's nothing potentiating that actualization. And then you would say, well, so that proves that the universe doesn't need an actualizer. And I could say the same thing about God, that God doesn't need an actualizer. Or
Hold on, what's the argument that you're making?
So that God, that the eternal universe and God would be the same thing. Like I could say the same thing about God as you could say about an eternal universe. Basically.
Sure, except you and I both know that the universe exists. You and I don't both know that God exists. So like my hypothesis on, the fundamental reality of the universe is something we both agree on, and your hypothesis is something that we both don't agree on. And
right,
we have evidence that the universe exists. What's the all I'm saying is that like my metaphysics is simpler, and my metaphysics is simpler and has the same explanatory power as yours does. So why would I believe your metaphysics?
So I'll give you a thought experiment, right? Let's say I'm gonna use a moral thought experiment here to kind of prove my scientific theory in this. So let's suppose that me and you were on a plane, right? And let's say we crashed on an island, right? And let's say that you found out that I had food, basically, and for some reason you wanted the food and you wanted to come kill me, right?
And just a question. So on this island, you took all the coconuts, and
yes,
you said you took all the coconuts, and you said that you wouldn't give me any coconuts unless I did unspeakable things for you.
Yes, so unless you killed me, I'm not going to give you these coconuts and share these with you.
Alternatively, surely there are sexual favors that I could do for the coconuts, right?
No, the only thing you can do is you have to kill me for these.
Okay, got
basically.
it. Got it. Okay.
So you would say.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I don't.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. I was just memeing. Those who know
you're good.
know.
I'm just trying to complete. You know. I'm just trying to complete the more. I see what you're saying. No, it's funny though. No, I get it. But anyway, I would say you came to kill me, and I say you can't kill me. That's wrong. How can you prove that? Basically, I could give you a bunch of more arguments that I think it's wrong that you kill me, but you're gonna kill me no matter what.
Okay.
Right?
Where are we going with this?
So here's how I would say the same thing. So you can't prove, you can't 100% objectively prove that the sun is going to rise tomorrow, or that the Earth is going to continue spinning around the sun, right? And someone could, like a flat earther, right? You could tell a flat earther all these objective truths and your view about science, and you could say, oh, that's a scientific consensus and this and that. But the flat earther could just say, I don't believe that. And then that would just be true in their world.
So just a question, where are we going with this?
What I'm saying is that you can't say there isn't a God, because that's just a subjective point of view.
Are you saying that nobody can say anything because it's all just subjective?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. So do you have anything that is compelling that would convince me to believe?
But here's what I believe, that if there's a God, here's what I would believe though, is that the God is there's a God who's all-knowing, all-powerful, but is maximally evil. And there's not a good.
That fails because there's gratuitous goodness in the world.
What are you basing that off of?
Experience. There is goodness that is not necessary for a greater evil. Like what?
And what are you? Is that an intuition based, or is that an objective based? Are you just using an intuition?
No. It's. I mean, it's like we can probably agree, unless you think that all goods actually are for a greater evil.
Yes, exactly.
So that's the claim. So you would say that
can I give you an example of what example of that?
Well, I'm sure you can give an example. The point is that true for every example of everything that's good? So, for example, I married my wife, right? Because of love, it turns out. What is the greater evil that good comes from, or that good is necessary for?
Because someone else would not have a wife and never could possibly have a wife, and so that they feel bad about not.
Oh, so the greater evil is that they're jealous?
Yeah, that they become jealous. Same thing as like a homeless man who's on the street and begging for money, or they're gonna die or whatever. And then let's say they walk down a street and look into a window.
Jealousy. Wait, so jealousy is worse. So Okay, so how about a
It
simpler
makes them
example?
feel worse about their situation.
How about what if I just see a homeless person, nobody's around, I see a homeless person, and I have some spare cash, so I just give him my spare cash.
Sorry, I actually wasn't. You said
There's
you
no
give
one
them your
around.
spare.
I just give the homeless person my spare cash because I have some spare cash on me that I don't need.
Right, but then let's say another homeless sitting next to them.
No,
you
there's
don't
nobody
give
around. There's nobody around.
There's nobody around. Only they.
It's just me. Like I'm like they're just like under a bridge or something. I'm just walking under the bridge to work or something like that.
And you just give them cash just because you feel
Yeah, I'm
like
just
it.
like, yeah, here you go, bud. Like I don't need it. You need it more than me. Here you go.
Right. So then I guess there would be no outside observer to say that that's worse than my situation. So I guess then it would argument would kind of break down. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Rather, a better explanation is that there are some good things in the world that don't lead to a greater evil, and some evil things in the world that don't lead to a greater good. And that's the case because evil and good are purely human notions that we defined, and the universe doesn't care about us. That would be a much, much better explanation for why there are some good things and why there are some bad things.
Right, but you're kind of taking that situation where you gave the homeless person cash in an isolated scenario. You're not allowing for the homeless person to say, let's say they went back to their tent or whatever, and then they went to go purchase something, and another homeless person saw it. Where'd you get that money? Someone gave it to me on the street. Well, no one gave me money today. Guess my day's worse than yours.
So, by the way, if this is your position that there's a maximally evil God, then really what you have to defend every single egregiously good action, by the way. And there are a lot of humans have done a lot of egregiously good things.
But I could just say that a good action is selfish. Like there's not really any good action objectively good or bad or like an objectively good thing, because even if the thing is good, it's still selfish to the person. So like you giving the homeless person money makes you feel good. It makes you feel like
and so
good,
is that bad? Is it bad that I feel good?
It's more like it's selfish. It's like a selfish reason.
But is that evil?
It could be evil.
So it's evil that I feel good when I do good deeds?
Well, it could be evil. Like you could be using it as an evil, like to just be spiteful of the homeless person. Like I'm gonna give this person.
I'm gonna give the homeless person money to spite the homeless person. You heard it here first, folks.
To hold it on a higher moral, like to feel like you're better than the homeless person.
But that requires that I have some internal psychology. But if that's not the justification for why I did it, then it seems like the argument fails.
So what your justification would just be? You just wanted to do it because
it makes me feel good because I like seeing other people be better, have a better life.
Okay, but then how can you? Let's say I'm gonna shift it to.
Or what about actually this is a really famous one. During World War I, during the first Christmas of World War I, the Germans and the French soldiers, they got out of their trenches and then just enjoyed Christmas together and played soccer. What was the evil of that? Of the joyful human interaction. Where is the evil there?
Well, I would say the evil is that they're fulfilling a selfish desire within themselves.
Wait, so just enjoying camaraderie with fellow humans is evil? You just have a weird view of what evil is, I guess.
They're still evil would be it's still a selfish reason. Like they're still doing it for selfish reasons.
Does that make it evil?
I think it does, because it's not improving the health of anybody. Like it's just not.
It improved the happiness of everybody.
It's not objectively good, and it doesn't make it objectively good though.
Do you believe that objective good and objective bad exist?
Okay, you got me. I don't believe any of this shit.
Fucking, I'm gonna block you. I'm gonna block you. I hate that. I hate that so much. That person is. You know what? That person proves the existence of an all-evil god. There, I said it. I'm a diabolist. I'm a diabolist now. Diabolist. John Pliskin, how's it going?
Hey, doing good. Yourself, sir?
I'm doing all right. You've been waiting very patiently, and I appreciate that. What God do you believe in?
I'd say I'm more of an agnostic than anything else, but if I'm defending anyone in this case, since we're choosing a specific God, probably the Christian God.
Well, but if you're an agnostic, like, why would you defend that as existing?
Just the concept of saying that there's nothing exists seems foolish to me.
So, to be clear, I don't think that nothing exists. I think that, like, the universe exists,
atheist.
right?
Well, you said you're atheist. I'm sorry. What would you define as atheist then?
I don't believe in a god or gods.
Okay. So what's the difference between not believing in a God and saying nothing exists then?
Well, the universe exists. I think the universe exists.
Of course, the universe exists, if you want to be that specific.
So there are things that... I mean, you said that... You asked what the difference is between being an atheist and believing that nothing exists. Well, I'm an atheist who believes that something exists, in particular the universe and the stuff in it.
So you do believe there is a higher power that did create these things then?
No.
I'm confused by your argument. Anyways, so what I was understanding from what you were saying is you're a man of science, correct?
That would not be inaccurate.
So what about science would make you think that God couldn't exist? Wouldn't science in general, from my understanding with being agnostic myself, proof of God, it's the ways of how a God was able to create the things we have versus just assuming it's the flash of light that we assume that the Bible or any other kind of work has said?
Well, I mean, it depends on which God we're talking about. If you're talking about, like, surely science can definitely disprove some notions of a God. And this isn't even science. This is just, like, observation. Like, if you claim that there's a guy who lives on a mountain and throws lightning bolts, then you can just go up to the mountain and check. And then you could disprove that God exists. There are other versions of God that I also don't believe in, but this is not a scientific claim. This is not a claim that can be verified or falsified by, scientific analysis. And so I rely on other methods.
And we've constantly seen you're using the example of Zeus. All these gods seem to be mostly connected. The story of Hercules and Ra and Jesus are all very similar. We all seem to understand that there is the same similar God that was able to create or kind of establish what we have, whether it's the universe, Earth, wherever the case may be.
Why would I believe that, though?
I can't imagine why you wouldn't. It's the simple fact that you're constantly answering the hows with science, but we're never really answering the whys with science.
Generally speaking, I tend to believe in things that I have justification for believing in. Mm-hmm. So I'm just asking, what's the justification for the claim?
Let me change the argument slightly for you on that one, because you're saying about justification for claims for proof. Another item we have zero proof of, but millions of people, especially science.
To be clear, justification isn't proof. I'm just asking for justification.
Do aliens exist?
Possibly.
So God possibly exists. The amount of proof that we have.
No, we have. So to be clear, we have justification for believing that extraterrestrial life could exist.
That justification for a God to exist.
I mean, that's not the case. The justification for extraterrestrial life existing is that life exists here on Earth. We have good justification for our beliefs in how life arose on Earth. And we also have good justification for believing that Earth is not particularly unique. And so the conclusion from those three claims is that life probably, not definitely, but probably exists elsewhere in the universe, just based off of our understanding of physics, chemistry, and biology. So those are justifications. What's the justification for believing in a God?
Everything you just kind of said, put on top of it, God as well. So we understand there is a possibility of other aliens out there, other creatures out there, whether they're more powerful than us, smaller than us, smarter than us, dumber than us, whatever the case may be. There is other beings out there. Why is it beyond belief that one of these beings may be the one most powerful, the actual God that helped create the universe from the beginning?
Well, if it was when I'm talking about like these beings, like these extraterrestrial aliens, I'm talking about biological life. Biological life requires atoms to exist, And so if something is made out of atoms, it can't have been the origin of the universe. It couldn't have participated in the origin of the universe, as there were no atoms prior to about a second after the Big Bang. So such a thing could not have existed prior to that.
So your concept is that there was nothing at that one point. There was no atoms that really created.
There were no atoms. There were other things, just no atoms.
So you're believing on what we've understand as science at this point, because at one point, as you mentioned earlier, about the world being round, there was one point hundreds of years ago, we assumed the world was flat. Science has consistently grown. We've constantly learned more.
Yep.
So there is a possibility that there is a God out there that is beyond what we know as atoms.
It's a God of the gaps argument. It's a God of the gaps argument.
Right.
That's not a good argument.
It's
a fallacious argument. You're saying, well, maybe we'll learn something in the future, and that will prove that God is real. Therefore, that's a justification for belief in God. Like it's just speculating about what might happen in the future. It's not a justification for a belief.
You could really say that about any form of science in general at that point.
Not really.
Just
we have justifications for beliefs.
Just for the simple fact that we can't seem to understand how God did these things we have as we continue to grow, continue to learn. You think just because of that, the gap argument, as you said, is the proof that God can exist, because that is a weak argument in your mind.
It's fallacious, right? It's a fallacious, like, it's like a known logical fallacy or informal logical fallacy. It's called the God of the gaps argument.
It's a fascinating way to look at it. That you can't go beyond that. It's something about the concept that's. I'm really confused by that. I don't see how that's fallacious. How that is a problem.
Look, so a justification should give you reason to believe that something is true, and that reason to believe something is true, that justification must be something that you can know, right? Like for example, if you want to justify that, I don't know, bacteria cause diseases, right? One way that you could justify this is you could go, well, first you have to establish that bacteria exists. So you'd go get a microscope and you'd look and you'd see, oh, okay, well, there's bacteria. And then you could, if you wanted to justify this, if you're looking for justification, you would go look at, like, well, what actually does happen when we expose people to bacteria? And you'd find that you expose some people to bacteria, they get sick, not ethical, but regardless. And you'd find, okay, well, so that would give you some justification. What you couldn't do is you couldn't say, well, let me give an example, or let me use that same example. 1,000 years ago, before we had microscopes, you couldn't say, well, what if there are tiny things that cause disease? You would have no justification for that position. Because even if it's true that in like 600 years, you would find justification, that doesn't mean that you have justification then, 1,000 years ago.
I'm curious, how do you feel about scripture being used as an argument against you?
As an argument in what form? Like if they're just saying, well, the scripture says this is true, therefore it is?
No, not necessarily in that case. Well, similar, I guess you could say. Well, for example, with Corinthians and Job, both in the Bible, like I said, I grew up with a Christian background. I can't really speak much about many gods, but from what I know, the Christian God, Jewish God, Yahweh, Allah, they're all connected. Same with Ra, similar to Jesus. All gods are somehow connected one way or the other. But as the Bible is really stated, in Corinthians and in Jobs, man can never really understand the power of God and really understand the strength of God and what he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, but that's just a God of the gaps argument, just in scripture.
So God's own argument about my justification is the gods of the gaps argument, as you call it.
Well, no, the scripture makes a God of the gaps argument. And the scripture, like the claim that the scripture comes from God, that's the claim that, why would I, like, if your only justification is a fallacious, like an informal logical fallacy, why would I believe the claim that it comes from God?
So where does science come from? Where does everything we learn come from? If there is no reason for the gaps, no reason to really continue to learn, why do we try to continue to learn?
I think you're misunderstanding. There's absolutely reason to learn, but the position, the scientific methodology, the scientific mindset, if you will, dictates that if there's something that you don't understand, then you remain agnostic about it until you do. You're like, I don't understand this. I'm going to go try to figure it out. I'm going to do experiments. I'm going to run calculations. I'm going to do simulations. I'm going to make observations. And then eventually I will build up enough evidence, enough data that I can justify an explanation. as it stands right now, you're saying, well, we don't have that data, that observations, that justification, but you should still believe anyway because we might have it in the future.
It's the same as an hypothesis, really. The understanding that, as you were mentioning earlier regarding the bacteria, there's these small little microorganisms that we know nothing about. This is why people are sick. That seems crazy until you have that belief system to continue to do your studies
and to
and
be
make
clear,
that true and understand that is true.
If somebody said that 1,000 years ago, they would have no justification for believing it.
That's true. Same with saying the same thing about God now.
Right.
You need to continue to make the studies to make the justification.
If it's true,
I feel like it's true, my argument more than anything.
If it's true in 500 years that somebody finds some excellent justification for God's existence, then at that point people would be justified in having a belief in God. But until then, there's no justification. There's no reason to have that belief. There's no rational reason, I should say.
I feel like we're on opposite sides in the same arguments. I feel like that's the same rationale why you should be able to believe at the same time. It just
look, so like if you just choose to believe without evidence, I mean, like, nobody's going to stop you from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that it's particularly epistemologically sound method of forming true beliefs. Because, like, I could make the exact same argument, an invisible teapot orbiting Jupiter that knows everything, right? And I could just say, well, but what if in 500 years we go to Jupiter and we find it? That doesn't mean that, like, it's reasonable to believe it today.
Similar to the aliens argument. Until we can prove there's aliens, we're just assuming there's aliens because we think there's a justification that
no, you're confused again. For the case of extraterrestrials, we have some degree of justification. It's not certainty, but we have some degree of justification for thinking that they do exist in the universe, because we have justification for beliefs in how life formed on Earth, for the propensity of Earth-like planets elsewhere in the universe, etc., and statistics and all these things. Like, we have justifications for this. Again, justification is not certainty, but there's at least justification for the belief. If there's no justification for a belief, and the only justification that you're proposing is something that we don't know of yet, that doesn't exist yet, well, then you don't have a justification.
I've got to say, I do enjoy your gimmick on this. I know it's the same story we've always heard with people. Those who know, those who don't would never understand. So I figured that would be the case. But I really enjoy this conversation. You have a really great concept of where you're really feeling on this, though. I like your gimmick, man.
Thanks. This is a weird... That sounded like a backhanded compliment. Did it sound like a backhanded compliment to all y'all? Like... Like, I don't know. That was weird. All right, let's bring up Gabe. Gabe, how's it going? Audio is super low. Shouldn't be. Should be super loud. All right, Gabe's not connecting. Oh, well, we also have some super chats anyway. From Gary with the 5 British pounds. The system does not work if there is proof of God. Doing good regardless of the proof is what proves you're ready for heaven or hell. Okay, that's fine, I guess. And from Just B with the 2 British pounds, thanks, that was interesting, I think is what he's trying to say. All right, let's bring up evidence Izin Wukwe. Evidence Izin Wukwe. Evidence.
Thank you.
Going?
No, it's all right. It's all right.
All right.
So
I've
been following from the Christian God.
Okay.
I believe in the Christian God.
Okay.
Okay. So actually, someone came up before, and I loved his argument, and I want to follow up from his argument.
Sure.
I think it was DSC. So he said something about causality. I wasn't really following, but I know it led up to a point where you said time was infinite. Like, you stated time to be infinite, like the duration of time considered to be infinite. Like, up till now, there has been
I lean that way, yeah.
Duration. Okay. So you believe that the universe as we know it existed after the existence of time itself, like based on the Big Bang?
Sorry,
Is
I
that what
don't
you
think
believe?
I don't think that the Big Bang was the origins of time.
What do you define the universe as?
The physical stuff and its container, if it has one.
The physical stuff, like what can you substantiate?
Like I can give you
stuff
examples. So like we could talk about like space-time is a part of the universe, and then like electrons are a part of the universe, and like you know, quarks are a part of the universe, and light is a part of the universe.
So everything is a part of the universe, but the
Well, all
universe
the
is
physical
not
things.
one thing. Okay, all the physical things. Any physical thing that can exist must be a part of the universe. If I remove one of all
I
the
would say
physical
anything
things
that
that
I would say
exist
that
right
any
now,
physical thing
do we
that
still
does
have a
exist.
universe?
I would say
I
any
want to know
physical
what
thing that does
exactly
exist.
is the universe. Like, I want to know what's
Yeah, so
the universe to
I mean, at a fundamental level, it might just be a wave function. But that might be going too deep. But yeah, you can just think of the universe as like all the stuff and the space that holds the stuff. The physical stuff, I should say.
Okay, so the like matter, gases, stars, and all of these things that we have.
Those are all
the physical container of this stuff.
Yeah, and like we could say the universe is like the whole collection of all of it.
Okay, you said you believe in the Big Bang Theory, and it means that you agree that 13.8 billion years ago, all the physical stuff that we can see started existing.
No, that's not what the Big Bang has anything to do with.
Because I was following you. Wait, one sec. I was following you, and you said atoms did not exist until after.
Yes, atoms did not exist because it was too hot.
Make up most of, if not all of, if not all of the physical stuff that we see in the world. Do you agree that atoms make up all the physical stuff we see in the world?
No, they absolutely don't.
Like
there are things that are non-atomic.
Okay, they don't. Like what things?
Neutrinos.
What are neutrinos? I'm sorry.
It's a fundamental particle. It doesn't have charge. It interacts via W and Z bosons. It is physical, yeah, we can detect them, but they're not made of atoms.
So it is physical, but it is not composed of an atom?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So your idea is that physicality is the universe, like all that is physical is what is the universe.
Yes, I am a physicalist, so yes.
Okay. So do you believe that thoughts exist?
I think that thoughts
Do you believe thoughts to exist?
It depends on what you mean by exist. In some sense they exist, in that they're instantiated via some sort of substrate. In like an instantiation sense. So they exist in the same sense that like computer software exists. So like there's the concept of computer software, and then there's the actual computer software that's on a computer. The actual computer software that's on a computer exists in the sense that like there are certain bits arranged in certain ways, and you know, they have like a physical existence. I don't think that like concepts exist on their own.
Okay, there must be objects to define the concepts.
Yeah, I think so.
Are you saying all concepts are objective, like have objects?
Well, at least those concepts.
Manifestations.
I don't think that concepts exist except insofar as they're instantiated by like some object.
No. Wait, are you making an argument that there is a chance that a concept can exist without a corresponding object?
No, I'm saying that I don't think that concepts can exist without the object.
Okay. So, initially you said something about time being a concept. Do you believe time to be a concept?
When did I say that time was a concept? I don't.
No. You explained that time exists infinitely, like the duration of time exists infinitely, and since we cannot find something else to, substantiate the idea of the existence of something infinitely, we would have to agree that time has to be a concept, because the idea of time is not something that you can prove is infinite.
Well, time is like a physical thing in that we can do physics to it. So
no. My question is on your arguments of time existing eternally. You said that earlier.
It seems like there are a lot of things that would exist eternally.
Okay, so can you just prove that time exists eternally?
Well,
Because
I never said that I could prove
you
it. I
can't,
just kind of
you would
lean
have
that
to
way.
agree. Okay, you believe, but it's like it's not
Yeah,
evidence.
like
based.
I'm
There
like
is no evidence for it,
60-40.
right?
I'm like 60-40 on it.
What is 60? So
Like
okay, it means some things.
It means that I'm more convinced that time has that the past has, there's. It means that I'm more convinced that there was an eternal past than I am convinced otherwise.
Okay, that means you believe. Do you believe that this your claim is justifiable? Like the fact that
I do have some justification for thinking that this is. I have some justification for thinking that this is possible and that it's the case, but it's not very strong justification, which is why I'm not convinced that it's the case.
Okay, wait. I want to be very sure of what I am arguing on right now. I'm sorry, but I'm going to go back now. You don't believe time. Okay, you believe time exists, but you are not necessarily sure since there is no substantiation.
No,
that's
not an accurate that's not an accurate representation of my position.
Okay, just tell me your position, because that was what I heard.
I believe time exists because we can do experiments to it. We can do physics to it. So it has physical reality. Now the question is whether or not for every day there has been a day before that. I lean yes, but I'm not certain, and I don't claim certainty on that.
So you don't think it to be true, since it does not have certain justification?
No, I didn't say I don't think it's true. I said I'm not certain of it. I am uncertain.
Do you think things to be true that don't have certain justifications?
Generally, I would say that something. I would say that I'm like certain of something if I have a high degree of justification, and I would say that I am uncertain of something if I have a low degree of justification.
That means it is not a thing of 100% justification, as there is nothing that has 100% justification.
Yes, but I would still I still use the language of certainty if I'm above 99.9% or something like this. Like I'm certain that the sun will rise tomorrow, right?
Okay, that means most of your conclusions are reached by induction, basically.
Yes, that's true. All. Yeah.
Okay, that means you can never account for all of the circumstances in the sets of.
Okay.
In the universal
that's why I don't claim 100% certainty on anything.
So okay, that means if I make an argument for you based on inference now, and it weighs more in on the probable, like the probability weighs more in the positive, like at least 51% more than the improbability, you would believe it by inference. Is that the position?
To be clear, the question of so I don't claim to believe things that I have a low credence in. But I might say I lean towards such a thing being true.
A higher credence. No, I understand that you said a higher.
Yeah. So maybe my threshold for
certain,
belief
is higher.
My threshold for belief might be like 90% or something like that.
No, you just said 60-40, and you told me you believe.
No, I don't believe that.
And you said 60-40.
I don't believe that. I said I lean that way. I said I lean that way.
What does it mean to lean? What is
it? Means
like,
it
I don't understand.
It means that like I think that that's more likely than the alternative, but I'm not sure.
So you don't believe it?
Yes, it's called being agnostic.
Okay. So you are not sure the existence of a time, like of the duration of time. So you can move forward on this. Okay, but you think it should be that, like the pointer, since we can use it in physics, since all the pointers are overwhelming in that we can use it to work in physics, then it probably does exist.
Yep.
Okay. Now, do you still stand on your argument that it must be eternal if it does exist? Like, are you still on that?
I never said that. I never said it must be eternal if time exists. I never said that.
No. You said time, like, as a duration. Time in its duration is eternal. That was what you said. That was what you earlier said.
No, I lean that way.
Twice.
But I definitely never said that it definitely is.
How did you lean without saying it? Like, I don't understand. How would I know your leanings without you ever making that information known?
I have said that. I've said that to every single person that I've talked to that's brought it up.
Okay, you have said it actually, not that. You just
actually, I say it several times a week whenever I have these conversations.
But you don't actually say it. You just lean, like those statements.
Oh no! I say that I lean. Not that I don't say that I believe that this is definitely true.
Okay, what I'm trying to please, I don't want us to go like cyclically on this. Do you believe that time exists eternally? The duration of time is eternal? We have not even started getting to the main argument, and
No.
we're still on this point.
No, I
Like, do you
don't hold a
believe-
positive belief about that.
But you lean towards that.
Yeah, I lean
because
towards that.
That seems most likely to be the case.
That seems more likely than the alternative, yeah.
So if I make an argument based on my leanings, you are not going to accept it, will you?
Well, look, if I share the same leanings, then I will accept it. If I don't share the same leanings, then you either have to convince me to share the same leanings, or
leanings cannot be shared. I think leanings should be more subjective than they are objective, don't you think? Because
well,
you have
they
a
are.
leaning
But the point is,
that
but the point is,
cannot be objectively
if you lean
established.
towards God existing, then presumably there's a reason why you lean towards God existing, and so you could present me with that reason, and if that reason is compelling to me, then I will change my stance, and
So
I will lean that God exists. Like,
all right, exactly. I want you to provide me with the reason for your leaning that time is eternal. Yeah.
Yeah. So
with the reason, something that I can substantiate and use to say, okay. Probably.
Yeah. So there's a few different reasons. One, it seems like the models that we have for describing the cosmos. It seems like there are more open possibilities for eternal universes than there are for finite past universes. So there are a few known possibilities for like finite past universes. There's Vilenkin's universe from nothing, or universe tunneling from nothing. There's the Hartle-Hawking model, which is something like a universe like a de Sitter type universe that kind of quantum tunnels from like pure space-like to partially space-like, partially time-like, and that's like kind of about it. There's some more fringe things, but there's not a lot of possible ways that the universe could be finite in the past. But there are like dozens upon dozens of possible ways that the universe could have always existed in terms of these physical models. So that's, I mean, like right off the get-go, I'm like, okay, well, it seems like we're able to explain an infinite universe better than we'd be able to explain a finite universe. So that already kind of tilts me a little bit. Second, there are notions in quantum mechanics that just like the way that we describe quantum systems, which we expect the universe to be, kind of demands that you can always run the clock back further. There's one exception to this, and that's if the system has zero energy, then it's possible that you can't run the clock back further. But if the system doesn't have zero energy, and it's not clear that our universe has non-zero energy, then you can always run the clock back further. That's just like kind of one of the features of quantum mechanics. So that also gives me an inclination that like we should be able to run the clock back forever. Then there's like recent observational evidence that dark energy might not be the way we think the way that we used to think it was behaving, and that the fact that it's appearing to get weaker with time indicates that we could be headed towards a recollapse in the future, and that would then be consistent with various models that have kind of like this like cyclic behavior. So those are roughly like the reasons why I lean towards the universe having always existed. Or the universe having an eternal past.
Okay, but because there is no empirical research or empirical evidence to prove that, you prefer to not say you do believe that for a fact.
Well, to be clear, like everything I just said was empirical. To be clear, everything I just said was empirical, but it's not definitive. So
what are your grounds for believing something? Like, what sort of evidence would you need to believe something for certain? Like for
it depends on the type of claim.
Would you need for
it depends on the type of claim, right? Like if you're
for a claim like this, now what sort of evidence would you need
for a claim like the eternality of time?
Yeah,
or for the claim of a god existing.
Eternality.
Yeah, so for the claim of the eternality of time, one thing that I would like to see is I would like to see a gravitational wave. Like in order to demonstrate that the universe has always existed. One thing that I would kind of one of the ways that you could show this would be showing like ancient gravitational waves that seemingly originate from the Big Bang, because then that would lead us to the conclusion that these gravitational waves were there before, which would then suggest that there was a before the Big Bang, meaning that that would very strongly favor an eternal universe.
You said the gravitational waves originated from the Big Bang. How does that establish that they were there before the Big Bang?
No, so for example, if the Big Bang was a genuine beginning, we know what the gravitational waves should look like. We can do the math on that. And so if we built an observatory, detected the gravitational waves, and they didn't look like that, they looked like something else, like perhaps they look like gravitational waves that have been traveling for a long time. Well, how could they have been traveling for a long time if they originated then? So that would be strong evidence that the universe has always existed, because it would mean that there was something before that they came from. Because, you know, they couldn't, like, it wouldn't make sense for them to have the features that they do if they, you know, if the Big Bang was genuinely beginning, for example. So that would be one piece of one way that you could do this. You could also study like the nature of dark energy. If we found like,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
there's like a whole bunch of different pieces of data. Like this is like a big question, so presumably you would need like a lot of different pieces of data that would kind of fall in line together. But yeah, I mean, like there are empirical ways to study this.
Okay, so this is my argument on the topic generally. Do you believe that languages can proceed only from a rational mind?
That language can only proceed from rational minds?
As we know them.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Rational mind. Do you believe that to be true?
Well, I mean, not
really. Do you believe that languages can exist without a rational mind?
Well, I think that languages can form.
Because languages...
I think that languages can form from non-rational mind, or from minds, from non-minds.
Okay, no, first of all, you would have to believe that logic can form from non-rational minds for you to establish that languages can form from non-rational minds. Like,
why would I have to? Those two things are not the same thing. I generally I think that logic precedes language. Sorry, I got that backwards. I generally think that language precedes logic.
Language precedes logic.
Yeah.
Are you sure that is what you're saying currently?
Yes.
Okay, so can you define what you'd mean by a language in this scenario? Like, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
a way
really
of communicating ideas.
Language precedes logic.
A way of communicating ideas.
So there is no. So your brain has a language before it can think logically. I want to know what you mean by
absolutely.
Like, so the concept of language precedes the concept of logic generally.
Well, no, like chronologically, the concept of language precedes the concept of logic. Now we can think like in sort of like a metaphysical sense, does logic precede language? That's a separate question. I'm talking chronologically. Language definitely came before logic.
Okay, chronologically.
Yeah, so
why?
and
Just,
so like it's very evident that language can arise without logic, because it did.
How?
It
I
literally
want to understand,
like
how?
so humans and other animals use language. Humans have not always had logic, and so there was a time when there was no logic. There was a time when there was no language.
What do you define logic to be? I think it is a definition,
it's a set of inference rules. It's a set of inference rules.
Inference rules that must flow from a rational mind, since you used humans as the example and animals.
I mean, well, I don't think that they have to, like, I guess you could be irrational as well, but yeah, I mean, roughly, it's a way of, it's a set of inference rules that, upon observation, if the precedent, if the inference rules allow you to come to true conclusions given true premises. That's roughly how I view logic.
So you don't believe the universe like interacts logically without a language? Without
no,
language
I don't think that. I don't think that logic exists outside of like minds.
In the universe.
No.
Okay, outside of our minds, generally, that's what you say.
Well, and maybe alien minds.
So okay, if there were no humans on Earth, and I place a rock beside another rock, how many rocks would there be in that scenario?
Well, if I'm evaluating it, there'd certainly be two.
But there are no humans there, and there are no minds to determine.
But you just asked me a question.
So
I have.
Why does it seem?
I can evaluate it because
I'm trying to ask you. No, the question is ontological. Like, I'm trying to look at the.
Well, so there's a fact of the matter that there are rocks there, and you know, if you were to ask somebody to count them, they'd count two. But the fact of the matter,
you don't
that
believe
there
are two rocks.
Sorry.
You don't believe that if there are. You don't believe that if there are no humans.
I don't think that the number two exists if there are no minds to conceptualize it.
No, I'm not speaking linguistically. I'm trying to.
I'm not speaking linguistically either. I'm speaking conceptually. So
the concept of one and two would not exist.
Yeah, I'm a nominalist.
Like biological fission.
I'm a nominalist,
Okay, so
so no, I
biological
do not.
fission.
I'm not a mathematical realist. I'm not a Platonist.
Okay, so numbers don't exist without the human mind.
Right, or aliens, yeah.
Is that your claim?
That's my view. Yep.
So before humans ever came into existence, at the Big Bang, like the singularities, rapid expansion and multiplication, just basically that first cell that created life, it did not divide. Is that the claim you're trying to make? Because for division to happen, there must be numbers. Like numbers have to exist.
Well, no,
for
not
division
really. Division is a biological process, and you're equivocating on the language used for division in a mathematical sense. These are two different notions of the word.
What does it mean to divide?
It means so we talk about mitosis. This is the thing that life does, and you have a cell that breaks up its chromosomes.
No. Mitosis is a language. Mitosis is a language that's only.
And I'm describing the process. I'm describing the process.
Okay, so processes can exist without the existence of language.
And without the existence of numbers, yeah.
And without the existence of logic, processes can exist.
Yep, sure.
Is that your claim?
Yep.
So you told me that logic means inference. There was something you said, something based off inference.
It's an inference.
Like
it's a set of inference rules.
So nothing flowed from something until the human mind started thinking. Nothing flowed from nothing. Like everything was just happening without any logical way of deducing how they happened. Then how were we able to determine, like how was the mind able to understand those things if they never existed before the minds? Like you are trying to make you're trying to make an argument. You're trying to we created logic, like the idea,
obviously,
the logical flow of things.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to me, I really don't understand your arguments. Because if I were asked to define what it means to divide, like the question I asked you earlier, I would say it means to reduce from a certain mass to like a mass less than it was before, like to separate mass less than it was before. Don't you agree that that is what it should mean?
That's what divide means? No, divide is a mathematical operation.
What does it mean? What does it mean to divide? So
it means to take a fraction.
Divide is a mathematical operation that has nothing to do with maths. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Maybe there might be a language issue. It's a mathematical operation. It has nothing to do with mass. Mass.
Okay. But it has all to do with mathematics.
Yeah, division is a mathematical division as defined by a mathematical operation. Of course, has to do with mathematics. Yeah, sure.
And mathematics has nothing to do with logic.
No, of course it does. The foundation of mathematics.
Do you think maths has something to do with logic?
Yeah, of course.
So mathematics cannot exist without the thinking mind. So no mathematical operation can, exist somewhere the mind does not reach currently. So you mean in our observable universe, there is a place where just because we have not started thinking or explored that place in terms of our thinking mind, mathematics does not apply there?
No. Mathematics is a language. I don't know what it means for mathematics to apply.
No, for mathematics to apply,
is a language. It only exists in our head.
The principles of mathematics.
The principles of mathematics are mathematics.
Do you believe? Wait. Languages only exist in print. Well, I'm trying to get your point as to how logic does not flow mathematically. So you believe that
logic is the basis of mathematics,
is
not the other way around.
Language. Logic is the basis of mathematics. But okay. But language is the basis of logic.
Yep.
So before humans understood logic, they first understood languages, and then they understood mathematics.
Well, then they had a kind of non-rigorous understanding of mathematics, and then Aristotle or whoever comes around and formulates logic, and then we started using logic to kind of ground mathematics. So
okay, so what you're trying to say is prior to Aristotle's existence, there was no logic.
Not
Where
in the way
did
that you
logic,
or I would
like, where
recognize,
did
no.
logic? But you believe that it existed, at least conceptually. Do you believe that? Because if you are going to make
not really.
if you are going to make the arguments,
I mean, perhaps there is some inference rules that people like intuited, but like perhaps not like the kind of inference rules that we think about today.
So gravity did not exist before Isaac Newton discovered gravity.
That's a weird straw man.
It's not a straw man. I'm trying to get your point. You are saying something, and I'm trying to show you exactly
if you were
what
trying
you're
to get my point, you would ask a question rather than just assuming a position that I hold.
Okay. Let me ask you: did gravity exist before Isaac Newton?
The phenomenon of gravity absolutely
in the same way Aristotle came about.
Look, so Isaac Newton described a physical phenomenon. So the physical phenomenon predates Isaac Newton. Like the fact of the matter that two things orbit each other. That predates Newton, that predates humans. The description, the conception of gravity started with Newton. Or perhaps Galileo.
So you don't believe that humans describe mathematics? Like
no,
the
we
existence of mathematics predates humans.
No, we
invented mathematics, but we did not invent gravity. What's the difference between the two phenomena?
Well, yeah. So mathematics is a language used to describe things. Gravity is a phenomenon that we observe in the natural world.
And that language somehow applies to gravity too.
Well, we invented.
Does it?
Literally, Isaac Newton invented calculus so that he could describe gravity.
So you believe that phenomenons exist outside the thinking mind of a human?
Yeah, sure. There are plenty of things that happen.
But logic does not exist outside of the thinking mind of a human?
Yeah, I don't think so.
So don't you think it is qualified to say that because this language, mathematics, exists, that is able to describe... Don't you... Sorry, like there's something else I'm trying to put together. I'm trying to put my thoughts together. Don't you think it is qualified to say that the language mathematics, since it has been able to describe a lot about the universe, like even before we get to observe these things with our thinking mind, don't you think it should mean that it's like the mathematics applying to those things? No, I'm not speaking based off the language we use to describe it, like the process of mathematics. Since you've agreed with me that processes can exist before logic, just that process that is mathematics, don't you believe that it exists before we can describe it? Because we cannot describe something that doesn't exist.
No, not really. I think that there are phenomena that happen in the universe, like real things, like planets exist and stuff like that. And planets, they move around in certain ways, and then we come up with mathematics to describe those things. Sometimes the mathematics that we come up with predates those descriptions, and we get lucky, and the mathematics that we came up with for nothing happens to work. Sometimes the mathematics comes about after the observation because we don't have the mathematics to describe it yet. And so I think that generally speaking, like there are mathematicians who treat mathematics as a game, and even though it doesn't exist out there in the world, they play the game. And sometimes some of that mathematics ends up being useful in the real world. Oftentimes not. So
you just agree that there are some categories of mathematics that predated humans, like that predated.
No, they predated the observations that they apply to. They didn't predate humans.
So the processes predated the observations, basically.
Yeah. So
like how gravity predated.
So like the phenomenon of gravity has existed as long as the universe has, right? At least as far as we can tell. But people didn't really start paying attention to it until people existed, right?
Okay.
And it wasn't until Galileo that we really started thinking about it. And then it wasn't, but even then he didn't have the mathematics the mathematics didn't exist yet to adequately describe it. So it took until Newton to invent the mathematics so that he could describe it accurately.
So what is it? What is it? Like what is
gravity?
It. You said mathematics describes phenomenon. Basically, that was what you said.
Yep.
It describes processes. It describes most things about the universe. So, okay, all those things are separate of the language used to describe them, and that language is only possible on the existence of a rational mind. Like that language, basically, since they exist separately from the language used to describe them, it should mean that a rational mind must be behind. Oh my God, I think my net is horrible right now. Can you hear me? Did you hear what I just said?
I can hear you, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
So did you agree to the last statement I made?
No, I don't think that there's a rational mind behind the phenomena that occur in our universe, no.
But how can the language of mathematics account for everything that happened in like all the phenomenons at the same time? If
it
that
can't.
Like, how am I going to put this now? How can
that's just historically
it can
false,
without
right?
it being that's what
it's historically false. So prior to Newton inventing calculus, mathematics could not explain. Prior to Newton inventing calculus, mathematics could not explain the orbits of the orbits of the stars, or the orbits of the planets, if you will. And so somebody had to invent mathematics.
Okay, but then you believe that there was an explanation. It just was not discovered yet. It just hadn't come to light. Like,
it's a description
regarding humans,
not an explanation. It's a description.
But there was a description before the human discovered the description.
So to be clear, there wasn't a precise description. There wasn't a description there wasn't a description that is able to describe things in a neat, tight, quantified way. That's what mathematics does. Mathematics is like a neat and quantified way of describing something that happens in the world. Or otherwise, it doesn't actually have to happen.
My argument basically is this, and I think you already understand my argument. That's why you're trying to dance around the idea of mathematics being.
And there's the rhetorical accusation of bad faith.
It's not a rhetorical accusation. I just believe, like, personally, and based off I can say I lean somehow.
Okay.
Because I have overwhelming evidence to support my leanings concerning this, that mathematics did predate the existence of humans. Like, the idea of mathematics, not necessarily the language, that like the form it took. Like, if we are going to be speaking on
what's the overwhelming evidence that you said?
Because I don't know how that this same language of mathematics that has taken different forms based on our like thinking mind currently. I don't know how else such a language would have been able to account for the vast amount of things, the overwhelming amount of things that's like the overwhelming amount of phenomenon in the world that exists today. If we are going to say those phenomenon were not initially designed to exist on that basis.
Oh, see, that's easy. It's because there's
the basis of that language.
The reason why our mathematics is able to describe the universe is because the mathematics that we developed is enormously huge compared with the features of the universe. Huge. Please, I'm not done. So think of it, the way to think about it is that, yeah, some of the mathematics does describe the universe. Most of the mathematics doesn't. So all we did is we picked the mathematics that we had already developed, and we found the stuff in our mathematics that we had already developed. And we said, that's neat that matches. But there's also like 10 times or 100 times more mathematics that has nothing to do with the universe.
So you don't believe in objective facts, basically. The fact that something can be
I think that there are states of affairs of the universe. Like, for example, I'm sitting in a house. Like that's, I think that's a fact about the world.
So it is objective that you are currently sitting where you are right now, regardless that humans
seems like it, yeah,
sense or can determine that you are.
I mean, it definitely seems like it. It seems like you at least have justification for believing that it's objectively true.
But the only way I can determine for myself that you are is because I can see you and I can sense you and I can describe what it seems like it should be.
And phenomenological conservatism Phenomenological conservatism gets you to the conclusion that you have some justification for believing it.
Okay. So, okay, basically, you just don't believe that mathematics, the language of mathematics, predated the idea of mathematics, predated the existence of humans.
Yeah, so you should look up nominalism.
So that,
nominalism is the position I'm taking here. It's a position I've taken for a very long time. It's not so far-fetched. It's fairly popular opinion even amongst philosophers, is my understanding. It's not the most popular, but it's fairly popular. But look, it is past the time that I end my lives, which is about 30 minutes ago, so I'm going to let you go. But thanks for being here, Evidence.
All right, then.
Have a good one.
All right, then.
For everybody who's been watching... Oh, I have super chats. Sorry, I can't end the live yet. I have super chats. From Gary with the 5 British pounds. The system does not work if there is no proof of God. Doing good regardless of the proof is what proves you are. Oh, I already read that. Yeah, so everybody, if you've been watching, thank you for watching and enjoying. I want to thank George. Was it George? Let me make sure. Let me make sure I got the name right. I want to thank George again for the $780 to fund Maple. I will be buying the I will be purchasing the license today. And I will post it in the Discord. So if you're not in the Discord, make sure to go join the Discord so you can see the license that I'm going to post as evidence that I purchased the license today. Super, super generous. And everybody else also very, very generous, but George gets a big W. So everybody, take care. I'll see you guys tomorrow.